All right, Mr. Tabasco, come on back up, sir. Mr. Milano, you ready?
No, that's mine.
Okay, we're gonna call the meeting back to order, folks. Okay. We're going to call the meeting back to order. Mr. Tintillo, the floor is yours. Go ahead, sir. Folks, we're back in session, please. Mr. Tintillo.
Peter, you knew the name of the development.
Yeah, it's Green Tree Court, which I think is Green Tree Estates.
Yeah, it might have been Green Tree Estates.
All right, Mr. Gannon, would you look into that one? My recollection, Mr. Tintillo, was that there was a disagreement around the width of the street, and it had to do with the parameters of how a fire truck could fit in there.
It was a cul-de-sac, not the street.
It was a cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
And I do remember that there was some discussion.
They had it down for 50 foot, the planning board
54 feet, I think.
And they got an okay to go 48 feet. They allowed 48 feet, which is okay. You can still turn a fire truck around. And they built it, and I went up and I wanted to know how to get in their COs. When I measured it myself, now I don't have a wheel, but I can measure with a ruler pretty good. And it's 40 feet wide. That's all it is. And I had the fire chief here who said absolutely cannot turn a fire truck around. Mr. Gannon told me that they took us to court.
No, the state standards are 40 feet, so they got away with it because of recess.
I mean, 40 feet is nothing.
Yeah,
And then they had their engineer here and they had their surveyor here, and he's telling me, well, we got electric lines down and we got curbstone in, and this is exactly what I said. That's what they make bulldozers and backhoes for.
All right, why don't we let us get you an answer. It doesn't appear Mr. Gannon has it obviously handy tonight. We'll get you an
Okay.
answer. All right?
Thank you.
Don't go far because we'll have you come back up again.
Okay, thanks a lot. I'm done.
All right, Mr. Tintillo, Mr. Curry.
Is he the last speaker?
Mr. Curry is the last speaker.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I haven't been up here for a while. I believe the last time I was up here I was wearing a winter jacket. And if I'm wrong about that, I certainly apologize to everybody. I skipped a couple of lines on the sign-up sheet tonight because I like to hear what everybody else says. Sometimes it prompts me to make a comment also after I've said what I came to say. And what I came to say tonight has to do with these messages on page 3 of the Howell Times every week.
That's political.
No, it isn't. This is straight out of the newspaper, not an opinion.
Let's hear what you have to say. I allowed Mr.
Yeah.
Howell to get his shots off.
But
Let's just keep it tame.
apropos of what I just said, sometimes something is already taken care of by the time I get up here. And I see that the $401,000 has been explained, and I do agree with we deserve to be told the truth all of the time, and I came up to ask that question about that one. So that having been answered, I'm satisfied, and I went to the previous week, and it said it has to do with the tax bills we all received recently with substantial increases did not include our revaluation. I knew that, and I guess some people didn't. And it goes on to say about the landowners who voted on the sewer line for Southern Route 9 are not Howell residents. I didn't think you had to be a Howell resident to own land in Howell. And these absentee voters were allowed to vote, even though if they were delinquent on their taxes. Is that a case where people delinquent on their taxes and allowed to vote on the sewer line?
Mr. Fletcher, do you know whether or not we have delinquency issues on people who were included in the Route 9?
I don't think that was part of their criteria. I think that first of all it was a poll to find out whether or not we had enough support there from the property owners.
Okay.
And I don't think part of the criteria was whether or not they had their taxes paid. We did not check.
But this was not a vote pursuant to some election.
No.
This was a
mail ballot to try to get a feel for the property owners that were there who are ultimately going to pay for that project out of a special tax, whether or not there was support there to actually run sewers in the area.
Okay.
So you were trying to find out if they were agreeable that they would pay for the sewer lines?
Yeah,
That's
this
what
was, do you want to pay for it or not?
I remember attending meetings where a lot of this was spoken about, and I couldn't quite remember, but it was something like that. I thought there's something wrong here. So they were being kind of surveyed to see if they were willing to pay
All right.
for the sewer lines, which, according to this, say $5 million, and they all will receive one free hookup. And they ask, who is going to pay this debt plus the $200,000 in interest this year? Is this the sewer rate payers or the citizens as a whole? Who will pay the projected $485,000 sewer deficient for 2006? There's a lot of numbers going on here, and they confuse me.
There's a couple different issues you just brought up there
Well, the only thing I can tell you, Mr. Curry, is
that were commingled.
I had asked the clerk to get a list of the evening that was acted on. I was on vacation. I was not here, and I don't believe that Mrs. Showmaker was here. The three council members that were here, I believe it was Mr. Malave, Deputy Mayor Tabasco, and Councilman Walsh, all voted in favor of that hookup arrangement. So it was a unanimous vote of the present members. So if there's some concern about it, it didn't come up when it was voted on.
I'm not sure,
I don't know.
what's your question?
Well, $5 million and one free hookup. Are the people who own those properties paying for this?
Yeah, I'm
That's my
going
first
backwards
question.
2-3 years in time now, but
Yeah.
there are some houses along Highway 9. I think there was maybe 3 or 4 of them. And
I
just so
remember
they
something
didn't-
about this, yeah.
Just so they didn't get hurt, we were allowing one free hookup, because most of the other businesses have more than one connection. All right, so that was just not to punish the homeowners. And Jeff can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But it was solely intended that this was not going to happen unless those owners all agreed to pay for it. So when we first polled, I think we needed at least a 60% affirmative response. And we had to go over a period of time and actually seek these entities out. So if somebody was delinquent on their taxes, we probably found them as a result of this effort to get the people to vote. Because I remember it took some time to get all the votes back. But once all the votes were back, too, we did know there was also some houses, so we did give the one free connection as a connection fee, just to make sure those people didn't get burned. And Jeff, you can correct
I
me.
do want to clarify one thing, because there, in my mind, as far as going, there is a difference between a connection and the connection fee, and then what we call an equivalent unit.
Right.
They are waived 1 unit of the fee that they pay, the connection fee they pay. If you have a place like Kobe Restaurant, whose water flow might be the equivalent of, say, 13 homes, they're going to pay 13 equivalent units, or 13 times the connection fee of a house, with 1 unit waived.
Right, okay, that's better
All right,
said.
now, a single-family house that's on Route 9
It's one.
is 1 unit. That 1 unit will be waived. They will not pay a connection fee to the township house.
So
So that
Kobe
every-
needs 13, they have to pay for 12.
That's right.
Yes.
And the one house gets one free, which is all they need.
That's right.
That sounds pretty fair.
And that's the only fair way we could do it in the law, where we have to treat everybody equally.
Exactly.
Was
yeah.
we could, as long as we had one place on there that was 1 unit, that's all we could waive.
And the reason why we picked South Howell first, Warren, because there was 3 phases, actually. They're supposed to be from Lanes Mill North all the way up to Freehold Township, then Highway 30. The reason why we picked it first was there was a health and safety issue going on down there. Like, scooters had to shut down half the time.
I recall that very well.
So they were all really, I mean, most
Some
of the
people
restaurant,
were going to shut down their businesses.
the not whatever was before Nagasaki, that place had the Kobe restaurant. They just basically were,
We're doing
Scooter
pretty
sold.
good so far.
and that's right, Mike Browner sold.
Scooters sold because he couldn't continue to pay for it.
So now it talks about a $200,000 debt in interest, and who's going to pay that?
That's a separate, that's on the, he's talking about the sewer.
That is the interest on the $5.2 million of bond service, and that is part of the cost of the.
So who pays that?
That will be included in the assessment.
So the
It's part of the
taxpayers don't-
cost of constructing this. Is
So the
to borrow
taxpayers
money.
at large don't pay
So
it.
we'll,
No.
No, the
I mean,
sewer users of that
The
system pay it.
there's not another
taxpayers,
burden we're putting on the
the
taxpayers.
ratepayers ultimately pay the cash this year, right? But that is part of the cost that will be recouped from the property owners of Route 9.
And that's how we did Route 9 when our previous council did it however many years ago. Was that the same blueprint that was used or
I
something
don't know,
similar?
to my recollection, this is we have not done a local improvement in the past. Most of the development that was done by government was done by the old MUA, and that was not done by assessment.
Well, anyway, there were about
Mr.
80
Filiaccio.
businesses.
Well, let me be clear on something. If somebody doesn't build on the property and doesn't hook up to the sewer, do they pay 15 or 20 connection fees or no?
When they develop, they do.
So they may develop in 50 years.
Okay.
Who pays it now?
No one pays it until they connect. That's a connection.
So who's going to pay the money on the interest on the $5.2 million?
That's an assessment. That's separate from a connection fee.
Yeah, that's not the connection.
And that's going to be assessed to all property owners, whether there's a building on it or not.
Okay, right now, we've spoken about this. There's interest due on a bond anticipation note.
Yes, there is.
We haven't had, it hasn't been reassessed on the property, correct?
Not as yet. Neither has the construction costs as of yet. We have fronted that money, and at the point in time when the project is done, I will certify to you the total cost of the project, and then the assessment process will begin.
There's about 80
Hold
lots
on a
that will
second.
be contributing to it.
I'm confused. I'm reading the resolution offered by Tabasco, seconded by Walsh. Yes votes, Malave, Tabasco, Walsh. Didn't you guys talk about this when we had all the data and we voted on it? You all voted yes. What am I missing?
Like some other things, I didn't have all the data at the
Oh, my
time.
Lord. Wait, hold on a second. All right, wait a minute. You're saying you didn't have all the information the night this came up?
Absolutely not. The same as I didn't have all the information when the insurance vote came up. I was not given the information, and we've spoken about that in depth also.
Hold on, all right. You know, it's late, we're not going to get into it. Okay. Then why'd you vote? Why didn't you abstain if you didn't feel you
How
had
do
enough
I know
information?
they asked for something that I don't even know exists?
But it's getting late because I'm not getting it. This doesn't add up. Okay, what else you got, Mr. Curry?
Okay, it refers to
Delegate my homework.
a projected $485,000 sewer deficit for 2006.
That's a
And
different- that's
who
the
will
different
pay
issue.
the projected?
That's different. That's
That's
nothing to do with
different.
this. That's the other thing. Jeff, you want to address that one again? He's talking about the
Go ahead.
MUA.
No, that's our
It's not.
projected deficit for 2000, and I don't know where that number came from. It actually is 555,000, but that is being paid out of the ratepayers partially, and is being supported by tax dollars right now.
And the reason for that is, and we've talked about it a lot of times.
Housing went
reduction in residential housing. Is that not
Yes,
right?
sir.
You don't know where the 485,000,
I don't know
Figure
that.
came.
I don't know where that number came from.
so that means.
It's 555,000, not 485?
555,000. Yes, sir.
So we have a projected deficit of 555,000 this year?
Yes, sir.
And last year, the taxpayers and the ratepayers were told we'd have a projected surplus of 770,000? Is that correct?
I don't recall
That
that.
was the year before, actually, of which there was. I mean, I guess the alternative is we could just go back and build more houses, but you're not suggesting that, are you?
We're rehashing the.
I mean, I don't know. I'm
We
not.
cut the rate from 161 to 153. We've been through this 100 times. Next year is the first year of real analysis as to where the rate should be. All right, we took monies from the sewer authority in one direction. We put money. I think we put $500,000 back this year. Is that correct? We put $500,000 back towards the
We absolutely did.
to the sewer authority.
We absolutely did.
But when the
Because we agreed to do it when we transferred the funds 2 years prior. We said that we would replenish those monies at the appropriate time.
and when the Highway 9 connections go live next year, all these units you're talking about, it will probably fund at the rate that's necessary to make it where it's not going to be running at a deficit. And then we can. And you also mentioned some other things. I'm going over old history now. But you said that there's OCUA now charges Mercer more, which then charges us more, and it's also more chemical costs. And you want to do a one-time adjustment to the fee if there's going to be adjustment to the fee, as opposed to hitting it this year and hitting it again. So
Yeah.
next year is the real year. We can do a good analysis on it. And in the meantime, it's just the accounting going on back and forth. We took monies from that 2 years ago. We put monies back this year. Next year we'll have the real analysis. I don't know why we keep arguing the same thing. Let's go to next.
What else do you have, Mr. Curry?
Okay, towards the end here, this won't take much longer. How did non-Howell residents gain such financial control in Howell? Have they gained control in Howell? Non-Howell residents? Have they gained financial control in Howell?
It wouldn't.
Is there any way
I don't know.
that could be explained?
It wouldn't appear that way, but
Ultimately, the financial decisions in the actual legislature that transpired as far as the Route 9 extension rested in the five gentlemen up and ladies in the
Yeah.
dais. I mean, the town council is the one empowered to, and actually did adopt the capital ordinance, and that capital ordinance specifically said that the property owners would be assessed the cost of this property. So it was a capital
Somebody
ordinance
felt that
slightly
there was
different
a-
than what we do with
So they
other.
couldn't have voted on it unless people who own the land, of which many of them were outside of this township, said, I am for the sewers. So in essence, it did give people who didn't live here control over what was happening in our
There was a
town.
courtesy poll that is not required in the law. The council did that to find out, to determine for their own mind whether or not there was enough
I got told
demand
that
and
too.
enough interest there to do it. But the town council here, under the statutes, have the express right to adopt a local ordinance to assess the property owners without ever asking anybody.
So why would they have ever been a percentage that they needed of affirmatives?
That was an insurance factor, so the town council knew there was enough support there to warrant going through this whole process of a $5 million construction
But
project.
you know what, let's just take this for a second. There are a lot of people who own businesses in our community. They pay taxes, they follow the law, they provide jobs for people. Many of us shop in these stores. You shouldn't have to live here in order to have a business here. The Route 9 corridor yields substantial financial revenue to the town. I mean, if we're going to tell the people at the Benderson Group they all need to move to Howell, or they wouldn't have been able to put their businesses in, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And to your point, Mr. Filiatro, it was you three gentlemen. I wasn't here. We're at Hershey Park with my kids. You three guys voted to give these people this so-called perceived authority if such thing took place. So I don't know why that was. I have no idea. It was a unanimous vote.
So
Somebody had a change of heart.
the non-residents of Howell do not have financial control. You guys still have it. They haven't changed that.
Mr. Malave, Tabasco, and Walsh voted in the affirmative to proceed in doing everything that whatever you're reading said was a bad thing.
Yeah, everything I've read comes right out of these ads from Bob Walsh, Angela Dalton, and Mike Howell. Page 3 of every week
Okay.
now.
And Mr.
The past few
Kelly,
weeks.
a lot of
I
that is based
haven't-
on information that came from this dais and these professionals. The $770,000 projected surplus. That never came about. There was a $187,000 deficit in the first year. It was projected by this mayor and council to have a $770,000 surplus. That's a $957,000 difference. If you ran your farm like that, if I ran my business like that, we'd go bust.
But Bob, you've been a...
Okay, hold on. Councilman Tabasco said it probably will pay for it. I mean, probably doesn't cut it in the pockets of taxpayers.
Those connections would have been up this year if we didn't have to put the pumping station in. That took an extra 6 months to get going, but it's almost done. So they will connect. So
Mr. Filiatro just got done.
I'm not
Okay.
going to challenge what Jeff projected. We weren't the CFO. He was. He based those projections on the fact that those were going to be online this year. They didn't come online. They'll be online next year.
He just got done saying some of them may not hook up for 50 years.
There's only a couple
There's
lots,
one
Bob.
thing
Like
here-
10 vacant lots.
A lot of numbers going on here. It's too big for my little mind, all right? But I want to just say this. You know, in your ads, you say that the people of Howell deserve to be told the truth all of the time. And you also say, we will tell all of the truth all of the time.
Yes.
I agree wholeheartedly with that, but there are those who would say you're off to a bad start based on these, because these are leading in the wrong direction.
No,
They're
Mr. Kelly,
misinformation. Well, everything here that we've talked about tonight has been answered satisfactorily.
can I say something to you, Mr.
Of
Kelly?
course,
Now, you're a board member of the United Republican Club, correct?
absolutely.
That's the people that are running against me this year, the people...
I'm
What
like
are you,
a
sir?
trustee.
You're a trustee of the same party that has 3 people running against me this year,
Right,
correct?
right.
And also supported Wayne Lucy against me last year, correct?
That's right.
Mr. Walsh,
Obviously, the people wanted me up here. Is that a good summation? You all sum everything up so well.
The
They
first,
wanted me up here. Is that a good summation?
pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
$770,000 projection by this governing body to a $187,000 deficit to a projected $555,000 deficits is the equivalent of about $2.25 million Okay,
You
in
lost me.
Hold on.
You lost me.
Guys,
Can I just,
we got to get to the ordinance.
I'll get out of your way.
Please, okay,
Just let me-
go ahead. Let's just not
just let me
political.
say this.
Go ahead.
The
Hold
first
on.
night you became a councilman and stood up there and sat up there, I came here and I supported your opponent, and I welcomed you aboard. And I wish you the best of luck. And I said, Mr. Walsh, you have an opportunity to keep your eyes and ears open and to, I'm paraphrasing, but this is about what I said. Keep your eyes and ears open, and along the way, you're going to find that these people up here are well-intentioned, that we have a good council up here. And I said, along the way, I'm sure you're going to be convinced of that, and you have the opportunity to be an obstructionist or to join up there and work for the benefit of the people of Howell. Isn't that basically what I said to you that night?
Mr. Curry, I've heard you slander me, and I've heard you say nice things about
You
me.
haven't heard me slander you,
So-
not at all.
You know what, guys? We're going to, hold on, folks. We're going to, okay.
I got one more thing to say. Helene Schlegel, congratulations
Thank you.
on your new position. And Tom, I commend you for picking someone good.
Thank you.
I like her style.
So do I. With that said, I'm going to let Miss Schlegel go home so someone's here to turn on the lights in the morning.
Good idea. All right, new
Did
business.
you flip a coin?
We have a variety of ordinances, most of which are going to center on the hotel. Is it the pleasure of the council to try and quickly go through all of the others so that we can just get them out of the way and afford these people all the time they'd like on the hotel?
Absolutely.
Is that satisfactory, everybody?
Definitely.
Okay, so we're going to do the hotel in a minute. Let's just get through the others. We have 882. This is an introduction. There's a public hearing and adoption this evening. 882, just give us a second, and we'll call up the material.
I hate these books.
Yeah,
I'm on record as hating these books.
Mayor, 882 are the community design standards.
Yes.
And
I'm just looking for
just,
my...
I'm just looking for the motions sheets.
oh, I'm sorry.
I don't...
I have 881.
I have 881, and I must have taken out my 882.
No, it's not in here. Unless it's up here.
881.
We just need the motions so we can...
Davis, would you please hand me a copy, please, of number 2? I just need the cover page.
Well, actually, the procedure page.
Doesn't appear to be in here. You don't have a copy in the clerk's book, Mr. Davis?
I'm looking at my own book, sir.
All right, you find it. Let's go to the next one. God, 883. 883 is fines and penalties. Introduction on July 25th, public hearing, and adoption on August 15th. This ordinance amends Chapter 1 with respect to fines.
You start, Mayor.
Ordinance number 00633, introduced and passed on first reading on 7/2506, and published according to laws being taken upon for further consideration in a public hearing. An affidavit of the publication of this ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of 7/2806 is submitted, and is noted that a copy of the ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and that copies were available to the general public upon request. Mr. Davis, would you kindly read the title of the ordinance?
That's the title?
I'll read it for you. Can I read it for you?
Be my guest, sir.
This ordinance amends Chapter 1 as it affects the amounts of fines and penalties to increase the maximum fine for normal ordinance violations from $1,250 to $2,000, and include a fine for unlawful solid waste disposal of $2,500 to a maximum penalty of fined not exceeding $10,000. Now that we've had a reading of the title, I'll open up the hearing to members of the public who'd like to be heard for or against. Anyone who'd like to do so, please come forward. Just give us your name and address for the record, please,
Hello, Don.
on 883.
Don Smith, 54 Vanderveer Road, Howell.
Welcome.
The only problem I have with this, these are ordinances that really affect people that are the least able to pay them. I think we're putting an undue burden on a lot of our residents. I get sick and tired when I see the fines higher for ordinance violations than moving traffic violations, in some cases, actual felonies. And it bothers me to see that the township appears to be trying to get rich off of its residents that can least afford it. I mean, this is a blanket on the ordinances. It's not specifying certain ordinances. And these aren't criminal.
Well, this one's on unlawful
moves.
solid waste.
This is
Now-
this is unlawful solid waste, Mr. Smith. This is someone
No,
who's-
not the whole thing.
I believe that there's other pieces of it, but isn't the primary piece of this solid
That's the
waste?
added on part is the solid waste portion.
This ordinance, the genesis of this was, I believe it might have come from code enforcement.
It did.
And the idea is to give the court the flexibility to impose a fine greater than $1,000, which now brings us into compliance with what the state of New Jersey provides for. So it does not impose a maximum fine, or strike that, it doesn't impose a minimum fine. It gives the court the ability to raise the fine for, I would say, those instances where you have repeat offenders. And the second part is to bring the solid waste disposal to a maximum penalty. So these are maximum penalties.
Well, okay, see, it doesn't say that in the Section 1, that it's a maximum. And I don't have an issue with the Section 2.
Yeah,
But the Section 1
maximum.
does not say that that's
I think it's-
anywhere's in it, that
I
that's
think,
a
Mr. Smith, what it
maximum.
means is it's replacing that 1250, which was the maximum,
Yeah,
and
well,
making
no,
it 2,000.
In the ordinance,
reference
it
to
doesn't
minimum,
say that, and I don't have a copy of
Sure.
the,
Current
There's
ordinance.
really no
Oh, the
reference to
actual.
minimums in any of this.
Is that right, Mr. Gannon? This is just replacing text, and it would say minimum, maximum?
Right. If you look at all our ordinances, the maximum fine for a specific incident is $1,000. The state, a couple of years ago, raised that to $2,500, so we're going into compliance. And basically, it's a tool for the municipal court judge to ensure that there's, repeat offenders are fined to the highest amount available. I think this came from prosecutor's office and also from the code enforcement.
okay, that I can understand. I just wish that it made some kind of a reference, the same way as it has in Section 2,
Right.
where it says a minimum and a max.
Well, I could see if you read it to say that that was the minimum, or that was what, but that's not the case. And
Okay, because I thought that's what they were going to jump up to.
No, that's not the intention. The intention is to give the court the ability to deal with repeat offenders, really.
Okay, thank you for the explanation anyway.
Thanks,
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Smith. Mrs. Weitengruber, come on up. Welcome.
Suzanne Weingruber, 25 Princeton Drive. I actually was not going to speak on this, but I'd just like to point out that the Ordinance Review Committee recommended that the language be changed to the maximum allowable under state law for things like the Peace and Good Order Ordinance code violations, because when the Ordinance Review Committee took a look at it, it was only 1,000, and the law had been changed to 1,250, and now it is 2,000, and it is the judge's discretion.
Right, I
And I
think
think
that-
our judge is very reasonable and very fair, as well as when you're talking about code violations, many times the code enforcement officer will try to work with people, or at least in the towns that I've worked in, the code enforcement officer really is looking for compliance more than the penalty. So I think this is a step in the right direction. And the only thing I would have said is that perhaps to keep you from having to continually revise the ordinance, amend the ordinance, that you would have included the language the ORC recommended, which was the maximum allowable under state statute. And then you'd be done for once and for all.
Well, that was another way of dealing with it, but in this case, based on the recommendation, we put that number in there so people could see
The actual number.
that but it's basically in compliance with code enforcement, the prosecutor, and the Ordinance Review Committee had mentioned that we should bring up the snuff to give the courts and the code enforcement the ammunition to fight, not your average citizen, but those who are repeat offenders.
Yes, I do believe it is in our 44-page report.
Anyone
I
else who'd
think
like
it's
to
on
be
page
heard on?
7, I believe.
Anyone else who'd like to be heard on this, for or against? Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public portion.
Motion that ordinance number 03-3 be finally passed and adopted, and notice of its passage and adoption be published in the March issue of the Asbury Park Press. I guess that's going to be in the
Mr. Davis, when will this be? When will this be? This is not correct.
in the August 19th issue of the Asbury Park Press by reference to its title only.
Okay, we have a motion. We need a second, please.
Second, Mayor.
Motion and a second. Are there any remarks from council members?
This is actually ordinance number 06-33.
That's correct.
I gave the wrong number in it because the paragraph had the wrong number in it.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Any comments from members of the council? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Mr. Malabay?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBelle?
Yes.
You want to go back to 882, Mayor? was it?
Yeah, do you have the sheet? Okay.
That's pretty funny. Yes. Oh, reading ago. Wait a second.
Yeah.
It's like 3 years ago.
Ordinance number 00632, introduced and passed on first reading on 7/25/06 and published according to laws, now being taken upon for further consideration at a public hearing. Affidavit of the publication of this ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of July 28, 2006 is submitted, and it is noted that a copy of the ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and the copies were available to the general public upon request. Mr. Davis, would you please read the title?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell for Article 14 of Chapter 188 to add a new section entitled Community Design Standards in the Code of the Township of Howell.
Okay, I'm going to open up the meeting to members of the general public for remarks for or against the final adoption of this ordinance. Anyone who'd like to be heard, please come forward. Come on up, Mrs. Feinberg.
Suzanne Weitengruber, 25 Princeton Drive. First, I do want to say that this document does go towards creating something that we need. However, I have several concerns. First of all, on the agenda, it is touted as affecting commercial property. But when you actually read the many, many pages, and I know our manager worked very hard on this, it starts right in the third paragraph with concern was identified, for example, with impervious coverage and building coverage in residential development, and the need to identify goals for community design, and then it says especially for non-residential. This does address residential and does address all use. And very little discussion has been given to that. People have dwelled on the fact that it will improve the facades on Route 9, something we all agree is needed. Nowhere in this ordinance does it grandfather the many residential developments that you have now. Grave portions, huge portions, Salem Hill, Candlewood, Pinewood, Glenarden, the old sections of Ramtown, even the newer sections of Ramtown, we will all be out of compliance. And there's nothing in here that says that what is on our streets now, such as my 35-foot sidewalk, 35-inch sidewalk, is now going to have to be replaced with a sidewalk that's 5 feet wide. Now, maybe that is supposed to be new construction, but it isn't clearly stated. Let me go through, Mr. Newcomb, before you start debating. It says under F1 to develop design standards that promote good civic design and high visual quality of site and building design in all land use categories. That includes residential. When you go to the next page under subsection I, the council wishes to make the following community design standards applicable throughout the municipality, including major residential development when applicable. In J, you talk about redevelopment activities, and we know what the word redevelopment has done in this town. I don't believe we have a redevelopment authority, so I'm not really sure why it's in there. Under general community design standards, it talks about buildings located at obvious entrances to residential areas. It also talks about others, but residential areas shall mark the transition into and out of the neighborhood in a distinct fashion using massing, and this one really worried me, additional height. Okay, we don't need 6-story buildings in our residential areas. Mixed-use areas are promoted, and quite honestly, I've been up here before. I'm consistent. I think there's a lot of other people consistent that don't want to see Howell start looking like the major high-density developments in Middlesex, Hudson, Essex County, where we have a pizza parlor on the first floor, an apartment overhead. I'm not really sure who in the town wants this, so I'm really a little bit concerned about what you have under Section 4 on the 3rd page on mixed areas and the promotion of residential use over retail. If you go down to Section 8 on page 3, corner lots, residential and commercial, but residential buildings situated on corner lots shall treat facades that face a street or driveway the same way as the front yard facade. For example, fences, porches, etc. shall wrap around, and the front and side facade shall be the same as exposed to the public street. Now, hopefully you're not going to come into Salem Hill and Glen Arden and all our other lovely developments and start making people retrofit. But do you really want to have to require people to have wraparound porches? There's things in here that I'm not sure people read. General infill projects, where there's a vacant lot in an existing neighborhood. It should look similar. That's probably a good thing, but when you add the other requirements for new building that are in here, will it really look the same? One of the things that applies to new residential development is that the street layouts have to be a grid pattern now, and cul-de-sacs will be prohibited. I'm not sure you really need to prohibit a cul-de-sac in a residential area. They have their appropriate use when the building is, particularly when you're clustering, and a residential street is a cul-de-sac's a nice quiet street. I'm not on a cul-de-sac, but I'm on a horseshoe. And it keeps things nice and quiet. Grid patterns, straightaways, and you think, just a grid, like an Excel sheet. Think a grid, straightaways generally promote increased traffic speed. So I'm not sure why we're requiring new developments to be a grid pattern much the way they do in cities. Think Jersey City, think Bayonne. Those are grid patterns. I'm not sure that there's anything wrong with the way our residential streets have been laid out. The curves in those streets, the way they wind around, does tend to keep the speed of traffic down. And people who are going to live on a straightaway aren't going to be very happy in the long run. It also prohibits drive-through establishments. Now, with all due respect, I don't want to have to park my car and get out and go to the bank. I don't have to park my car and get out if I want to go through a drive-in, even if the Dunkin' Donuts has a drive-through. To prohibit drive-through or discourage drive-through facilities where they're normally part of a use really isn't appropriate. Banks shouldn't be being told that they can't have drive-through windows. Neither should some of the fast foods restaurants that we have. I'm particularly concerned until when we get to front yard fences, that the front yard fences shall be set back a minimum of 3 feet from the paved sidewalk. Very few people put paved fences up against their sidewalks, but there are places in some of the older developments that they do have short 3-foot fences just to keep, particularly on corner lots. I can think of one right on Starlight Road, just to keep people from cutting across the corner. And I think you want to think about if they don't have very large front yard setbacks to begin with, do we really want to have them to prohibit people from cutting through their property, have to put the fence, even if it's a 3-foot fence or a 2-foot decorative fence, 3 feet back. It's going to look silly, and it is part of the residential requirements. Publicly usable site furnishings such as benches, tables, bike racks, and other pedestrian amenities, and we could use some more bike racks at town, shall, not may, shall be provided at building entrances. Who's going to maintain them? Are we going to have a picnic bench at the front of TJ Maxx, Kohl's, Rag Shop? How many per plaza are you going to have to do? There's a lot of detail in here, and I'm not sure everybody read everything. The one that got me, though, is sidewalks. Pedestrian sidewalks, and this is in the residential area, shall be a minimum of 5 feet wide in pedestrian areas. That's probably from the length of the table to about here, folks.
Let me interrupt you just 1 second, Sue, because you made a good point right away, which I wanted to ask Tom. This is your baby, Tom. Was this intended to be for former developments or just for new stuff?
Can I address that?
Yeah.
Can I
All right.
finish?
It is, no, I'll address the
No.
question
let
that's
him
been
address the
raised by
person,
Mr.
Tom.
Tabasco. All right, this is part of Article 25 of Chapter 188. 188 is the land development ordinance of the Township of Howell. So it does not affect any existing property that is not in the process of being developed. That's great news.
Oh.
All right?
No, it isn't
is
great
in the
news.
process of being developed. It's a part of the planning board's ordinance that it utilizes, Chapter 188.
Okay, the vacant lot, for instance, at the edge of Candlewood, because there is one right at the edge of Candlewood before you go into Sylvan Woods, that would have to be developed with its 5-foot wide sidewalks.
If there is no sidewalk within the whole area, in essence, these are guidelines also. They're with design issues, all right, which we all the time, the planning board gets a request many times from developers to basically have design issues waived. If there is a discrepancy that it's a 5-foot sidewalk and there is existing a 4-foot sidewalk, common sense will be applicable on the part of the
Where did the
plan.
5-foot sidewalk, since we're going to debate single issues, because I don't think 5-foot sidewalks in a new residential zone is really appropriate. Why do you want to increase that impervious surface? Do we want to create a speedway where the kids can ride their bikes on the sidewalks? Because the average in most residential developments, the most I've seen is about 36 inches.
No, you don't see 36 inches.
Well, I've been in all the new developments in our town,
Well, if
some
they're
of which
putting
were
36
built.
inches, then our land, then I'm going to talk to Bill's office about how they're enforcing the requirements of the planning board.
We don't have 60-inch sidewalks on our books right now.
Well, you at least have 4 foot at a minimum.
I believe a lot of them are only 3 foot.
Well, I beg to differ.
Why would you increase it to 60 inches?
What was the rationale, gentlemen? What was your recommendation? Go ahead.
If you go to any of your traditional neighborhoods,
Just pull a little closer, Mr. Chernetsky. I'm sorry.
For one thing, it's part of a package to increase pedestrianism, to increase the walkability of neighborhoods, where it makes sense and it's applicable. And a 5-foot standard is what you would typically find in traditional neighborhoods.
With all due respect, I live in a very traditional neighborhood, and my neighborhood's very walkable, but it's not
Well,
60 inches.
In all due respect, I've been to some of the most renowned traditional neighborhoods with a tape measure, and they're 5 feet.
Not the one in front of my house,
Okay.
or all of Candlewood, for that matter. I don't know why you want to increase the impervious surface, quite frankly, because the emphasis has been on, and all the talk has been about improving Route 9. So when you go to this and you start reading, and we all know that not all of us read it, but I tend to read these things, there is a concern here about what the impact is going to be on the residential area. Particularly, this says cul-de-sacs are prohibited. Not maybe you can have them, not discouraged, prohibited. Why would you prohibit if a developer comes in with a sensible plan? There's a lot of cul-de-sacs in Glen Arden, for instance. They've worked well all these years. Why would we now prohibit them?
Again, this falls back to a traditional pattern of town planning that we're trying to essentially create more of a pedestrian scale where applicable. And the idea of cul-de-sacs is that it's well, first of all, let me just say from a town management point of view, they take perhaps 3 times as long to plow than any place else. And they discourage connectivity, and that's what we're trying to encourage here.
Connectivity to who?
Connectivity.
People? To people connectivity?
People, and as a matter of fact, where there is a grid pattern, as opposed to this curvilinear pattern, traffic speeds are typically slower because there are more stops. So that grid pattern of development encourages pedestrians by slowing traffic down. Also, just getting back to the 5-foot sidewalk, I know, typically when people go for a walk, if they go out with their family, a husband, a wife, a stroller, and maybe another child, and you try to pass someone walking a dog, this is the new standard for walkable communities, is a 5-foot sidewalk.
Are you also?
Let me just finish on the grid patterns. Future of transportation in New Jersey, all right, fit. All right, you should you use the websites, go to the website on NJDOT on the state page, and you'll see that grid patterns are the patterns of promotion by New Jersey NJDOT.
And they do mimic a whole city atmosphere, and I don't know if we're trying to recreate Howell into what we think we're going to have a walkable downtown, but this town will never have a downtown unless you take it down and start from the beginning.
I'm going to
That's not a bad idea. Please don't interrupt. Well, I do think it is a bad idea, and I think that's very insulting to the people who have lived here and who have helped plan this town, because you know what? I think Glenarden was well planned. I really do. I think other parts of the town are extremely well planned, and to say that it's not a bad idea to take the town down and start all over again is really quite insulting. And I'm sure you meant it off the cuff, Mr. Newcomb, so I'll let it go. Okay, but
Unbelievable.
It's not really appropriate. The grid, are we trying to push Howell's residential community into an area where you think you're going to walk to downtown?
That's a matter of zoning, and that's a matter of a master
That's
plan.
exactly
But
right.
things come up all the time. Things are imposed upon us all the time. These standards put us in a position to address them in a way that doesn't allow the developer to just get away with whatever he wants. This makes no zoning requirements.
Don't you think it would be better to use the word discouraged if you really don't want cul-de-sacs instead of prohibited? Because now it becomes a real waiver issue. You say prohibited, it's prohibited.
But it
And why, if you want to say
becomes a waiver issue.
discouraged,
It becomes a waiver issue.
All of these are subject to waivers, which are not the same as variances, and there's a lot.
but if it's discouraged, it's not subject to a waiver. And I quite frankly think trying to push everything into a grid pattern when you don't have that in this town right now, to come in and think that we're going to do a full sweep and just completely change the character with mixed use and grid patterns, which is very cityfied. Really, I'm not sure that's where
Very,
the
very
town needs to go.
quaint. There's some extremely quaint traditional towns that have stuck to the grid pattern. It's a matter of density.
But
whether you
we have
define it
never
as a
used the
city.
grid pattern.
Sue,
That's the point.
We're just trying to be a diverse town. There's just 20,000 households. Just use
Peter,
a round
just a
number right
moment,
now. No, I
please.
have to interrupt here because you're
We
lecturing our
have never
professionals.
used the grid pattern we have never used the grid pattern in this town.
It's time
And
to move
certainly,
forward.
excuse me, if we've never used the grid, you're
She's
not
out of
going to
line.
take all, no, I'm not out of
You are out of
line.
line.
Peter, you're interrupting me again.
Because you're wasting our time.
I'm sure everybody wastes your time, Peter. Can I finish my comments? I'm not lecturing anybody. The law says on a public hearing, people can bring up things. This was touted as commercial facade.
They're giving
and
you
it's-
the answer. And
Peter,
you don't like it, that's
Peter,
fine, but they're
you-
giving you
every
the answer.
time I come up here, you talk over me. Because you don't like what I have to
wasting
say.
our time.
Well, Peter, maybe you're wasting our time. Thank you, Mr. Walsh.
We have a diverse need in this town.
The town has never had a grid pattern before, and you're not going to completely turn over all those developments. What I'm saying to you is maybe if you want to say it should be discouraged, because I think there's a lot of people who don't agree with discouraging as opposed to prohibiting. To say that a sidewalk needs to be a minimum of 5 feet in a residential area to prohibit mansard roofs, because actually there's a one model in Candlewood that has mansard roofs. To take it and to have somebody say that really, we should just take the town and start all over again, that's inappropriate. We've been here for 200 years, and the people who do not like the looks of Candlewood and Glenarden and the developments in Ramtown and in the northern parts of the town, if they don't like those developments, many of which have been here for 50 or 60 years, maybe it's time for them to relocate.
Yeah, Mayor, I would just add one thing.
Sure. Go ahead, Mr.
The
Kaminsky.
focus here is very much on Route 9. Applicable everywhere, sure, but let's not forget that Freewood Acres is very much in a modified grid pattern. And unless we reinforce something like that and say it's important, then who's going to value it? What guidance will the planning board have in terms of a policy document? And the whole issue with going back to the hotel ordinance is that we need to have design standards in place that recognize the fact that residents live nearby and that it needs to be complementary. And the way you do that is basing it on traditional community design standards, which is what's reflected here. And again, one more point. We have over 80% of our town in residential development, and much of that has followed in what we would typically call a sprawl pattern of development. That's been the prevalent pattern over the past 40 years. This ordinance would apply to new developments as they come in, or yes, the language is redevelopment, but that's a small R2. Anyone wants to take a neighborhood and redo it, they still have to value these patterns that we're proposing.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry, Mr. Tabasco.
So he actually just talked about a lot of things I wanted to bring up, but what I'm trying to, I'll say in 30 seconds or less, all right, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 16 to 20,000 houses. I forget the exact number, but we're not going to go back and change all those households. We're looking forward. We have a diverse population already in this town and diverse needs for housing. What Tom is trying to bring forward is to probably bring a little small town area section to Howell. And where we could better afford that than along Highway 9, which is our main corridor. That's what this is intended for. So if we want to have teachers and policemen and others of those types, single moms, divorced father, whatever, living in an area where they can just walk to their stores and walk back to their homes, why not have them? We have all the other things already. It doesn't mean we should go forward and preclude those types of people from wanting to be in this town. And whether we like it or not, we have affordable housing concerns to address in round 3, and this is a perfect way to do it, where it'll be a beautiful community type thing, and you'll still have met all the goals for the town. The town will be built out over the next 20 years. We have control of it right now. We're not going backwards and changing what the other 20,000 homes already are like, but we do need to address the needs of the future population. And 2 areas where we don't address it at all is stuff like Tom just brought up, and also with the seniors, which we'll argue another night on the seniors type stuff. But
welcome. Just give us your name and address, please, for the record, sir.
Sure. Tony Esposito, 62 Crest Drive.
Hello, Mr. Esposito. Comments on this ordinance?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
In particular, Section 188A5, Residential Garage and Parking Design Standards. The first section says no driveway more than 10 feet wide. Think about that. Does anybody here have a driveway that's only 10 foot wide? I probably have one of the smaller houses of everybody here. My driveway's 25 feet wide, at least.
Is it really?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you have a 2-car garage, your driveway's going to be 20 feet wide.
minimum is 18.
At a minimum.
Minimum's about 18 or 20. Gentlemen? I mean, this obviously wouldn't impact you. This is
No,
really
but for new construction, I mean,
for new-
you're really limiting, people to a 1-car driveway. You want them parking their cars out on the street? Most people, if you only have a 1-car garage.
Yeah, I think we've
That
heard
is
some
strictly
good
through the
things.
front yard. It's basically what we're talking about. Access through the front yard area shall be no wider than 10 feet. So if you had a loop in the front yard, it would be 10 feet wide. It'd only
Oh,
be
so this
10
is not a traditional driveway. This is a front, which is intended to be the loop driveways?
Right. In the front yard.
Circular
Okay.
drive,
Does that answer your?
semicircle.
Semicircle.
I mean, is that clear enough that
Yeah.
comes
Well,
out?
maybe it's not clear enough, but I
But if
mean,
you're allowing a semicircle, you go down a little further, and you're saying that you're only allowed 1 driveway apron per lot. Now, do I understand that to mean the opening in the curb? So you can't even have a loop driveway at that point. And, you get someone that builds a house on, say, 10 acres, and they want to have a nice loop driveway, why couldn't they? And you're really shooting yourself in the foot with that.
And I've heard some good things, Mr. Esposito and Ms. Feigengruber. Could we clean it up a little bit before we vote on this? Because obviously, some things are a little bit gray there. That maybe need to be more explicit so we know exactly what we're dealing with.
It's a large ordinance, and I'm not sure that we would, and I think it's a work in progress. And there were also a few areas where the planning board suggested we do some language modifications as well, although they agreed it was consistent with the master plan. I think council has two options. You can, as it's time for adoption, you can move forward with adoption, or you can table it and we'd have to reintroduce it. But I think it's a work in progress, and I think there are a number of areas we can tweak.
I mean, the only thing, to my view, is other than this driveway issue, and I have read it,
But
front
let me
to back,
say
and I'm not uncomfortable with anything else. The driveway is a great catch. That's a terrific
And, you know,
catch.
you
I'm comfortable
already
with
But let me say, this
You're-
does not
it's-
apply to your
Right,
property.
right.
It applies to
To-
new
to new
development.
construction.
And this is what, one of the premises we made too, and I have to be, careful with what we're saying here, but, you have, in general, strict design standards by someone coming into, an area that's being infilled or something like that. They'll be looking for a lot of waivers, and the more waivers they look for, the more they're going to have to.
Pony up, we'll call it.
Yes. So again, these do not apply to existing residential areas.
Okay.
Okay.
Great comment, Mr. Esposito. Thank you. Yes.
Kathy Esposito, 62 Crest.
Hello, Ms. Esposito.
How are you? I have to agree with Mrs. Weitengruber about the 5-foot sidewalks. And, you're looking at a town that is getting taxed out of people's homes, and you're going to put an undue burden on people when you bring up another new development by putting more sidewalks down. I think Mr. Walsh is correct. I think we need to clean up the language in this ordinance.
Well, thank you for saying I'm correct. I feel a little bit better about myself this evening.
See, at least there's one, Bob. That's exactly right.
Also, on the grid pattern, I do a lot of business up in Jersey City in the Bayonne area. I beg to differ with you, gentlemen. There's stop signs there. They shouldn't even have them there because people ignore them.
Oh, that's a city. You have to compare.
Well,
apples to
Howell is
apples.
getting no different than Jersey City and Bayonne in my eyes.
We have residents tell us we're Mayberry.
I don't think so.
Thank you, Ms. Esposito. Anyone else who'd like to be heard on this ordinance, for or against? Please.
Just to remind everybody, these are design standards, as opposed to someone who wants to come in 10 foot on a setback, which requires a variance. So when people are talking about prohibit, et cetera, those are terms of art. If somebody wants to come in and say, look, this property is not related or will compel a grid pattern, then they come in with a cul-de-sac, and the planning board has the discretion to waive it. So
Good. Come on up, ma'am. Please introduce yourself for the record.
It's Barbara Beto, 21 Woodland Drive. I just want to say, Mrs. Gruber, I think that she is there advocating, because there are people like, we don't understand the process sometimes, and this is pretty involved.
That's right.
So, and it sounds more important than I actually thought it was. So I do want you to reconsider and just examine it again before you vote on it.
Angela Dalton, 13 Madeline Court. I'm not speaking for or against. There was a young woman that I met before the meeting started. She lived on Herbertsville Road. I believe she was talking to Mr. Terneski. She is a professional planner, and she had pages and pages of notes. And I had a conversation with her, and she had a lot of good things to say. It's 10 minutes after 12, and she's not here. I think that you should seriously consider tabling tabling the ordinance so that we can have more opportunity to tweak it and get the benefit of that resident's opinion on that. Because I think, as a professional and a resident of the town, she had a lot of important things to say. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
I also spoke with her, and she had she's working on a number of applications that are coming forward, and that will be before the planning board.
Oh, wait a minute, so she's representing people who are going to want to build houses in the town?
Well, I don't know about it. We didn't get into the specifics. I think they're commercial, but she's not here, and
Hold
I don't
on
want
a
to speak
second.
for her. But let me say
She's
this,
entitled
that
to
we
her
have,
opinion, we welcome her opinion.
but we have made arrangements to meet, and I made it clear again that this doesn't apply to existing structures, and that it is a work in progress, and there'll probably be changes that we want to make as we go along.
Mr.
So I
Nunziata, what were
invited
you
her
going to
meet
say?
with us.
I said she does visit my office frequently, and she's employed by an engineering firm that does work in this town.
Doesn't deny her the right to speak, but it's good to know. Anyone else who'd like to be heard for or against this ordinance? Seeing no one, I'll close the public portion. What is the pleasure of the council?
Well, let me ask Tom and Chuck, before we make a motion, either way, would you want the opportunity to maybe play with this some more? Or what are you telling us you really prefer?
I want the opportunity to get my hands on the development applications that are coming through. And so I would like to have, my preference would be to have this on the books.
And we can always amend, right, Tom?
Well, as indicated, it's a very voluminous, and you can look at each one, and we can debate how many angels on the head of a pin, but that's why you can always amend an ordinance. And if there's something that the professionals look at and I look at and say, well, maybe it should be cleared, we do have to deal with the planning board, then another ordinance can come in and amend it. But I mean, an ordinance like this, it's a design standard. It's not setting bulk requirements. It gives the planning board a lot of discretion, and it's already been interpreted by the planner and the manager, and I agree with their interpretation that some of the concerns raised here are not really of such a magnitude that would prohibit this from being made into a fine ordinance. Not to say that it needs to be needs to be tweaked. There may be certain instances, but overall, I think it's a pretty good document.
And that willingness to tweak is there, correct?
Oh, I mean, we're talking about the sidewalk. That's a policy issue.
I guess here's my concern. When we were talking, when we discovered that for whatever reason, there was no ordinance on the books for height, we wanted to do everything we could, rightfully so, to get it on the books. We felt we were open and vulnerable. Right now, we have large-scale applications. There is a backlog at the planning board. We are continuing to have to add meetings. I think we went, at some point, we met at least 2 to 3 Thursdays every month from January to June consecutively because of the backlog of applications. And so right now, an analogy is we're just as vulnerable on some of these standards of which we have no control over today as we were with respect to not having a height ordinance that we found out that for some reason wasn't on the books. So I guess my concern is we are losing time in terms of having more say over what developers tell us they're going to do versus our having a set of guidelines that can put us in the driver's seat. And I would much rather us be in the driver's seat, have a piece of legislation on the books, and if there are things that need to be amended and tweaked, then we should go back and do them, and we're open to doing that. But I think we're just as vulnerable in these areas on what is our main street, Highway 9.
Right.
We're just as vulnerable as we were on the height ordinance.
So I concur with you, and I would also say that people like Sue should probably meet with Tom and Chuck offline, not here at this meeting, but then work on some of the tweakings of some of these things so we get it to be the finest it can be later on. But I'm hearing what you're saying, that we're at risk a little bit. You guys are comfortable enough. I would lean your way, but ask you to entertain a lot of the comments that are coming from the audience.
All right, so what's the pleasure of the council? So I'm going to make a motion to table.
You have to close the...
I did. I
Oh, you
closed
did?
the public portion.
All right, so motion that ordinance number 06-32 be finally passed and adopted, and that notice of its passage and adoption be published in the 8/1906 issue of the Asbury Park Press by reference to its title only.
We have a motion. We need a second.
Second, Mayor.
Motion and a second. Any additional remarks?
As much as I would like to see it adjusted and wording changed, I agree we can't be left out there with anything on the books. I need to rely on you two and the attorney and people from the township to get some advice on how to work it out so that it serves the best interest of the people of Howell. I truthfully don't want to vote for it as it is, but before I leave the town out there with nothing on the books, with applications out there, I will. But I really do want to see it worked on. I'll look into it myself. I'll be following up with you because I would like to see some things changed. You know, I have my pet peeve. I get beat up every time for that sidewalk that ends halfway in the middle of somebody's house. I get killed for it every time I see the gentleman. And how that's on our books is beyond my knowledge.
Any other comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Malabay?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay, we're going to go back to...
Where are we? Yeah, where are we?
I believe we just have introductions. Let's do, boy, oh boy.
884.
Yeah, correct. Why don't, can we not introduce these tonight and just go to the hotel? Is there any reason why these have to be introduced tonight?
Oh, just give me a second.
884, we haven't done this, Mayor.
Yeah, I know, I'm just,
You're looking at the elevator.
maybe, do we have to act on these? Can we get to the hotel?
There's some bond ordinances on, the CFO should just address that.
The bond
Yeah, we gotta
ordinances are entire 06 ordinance. If we go on track now with introduction now and adoption September,
takes 2 minutes. We
it's
can-
November
we-
9th, October 9th before they can even start spending the money. And to
we
not
gotta do it.
introduce now, you're talking about November before we can even start our 2006 capital program. Then we'll sit there in budget time and say, well, how come this money hasn't been spent?
That's only going to take 2 minutes.
Yeah, all right, so we'll do this at the end. Let's open up on the hotel ordinance.
Introductions go fast.
Yep, they do.
Mayor.
Okay. 8A1, this is amending the land use, establishing a hotel and/or conference center as conditional use in the Highway Development Zone 1 and Highway Development 2 zones. So hold on 1 second. Ordinance 00623, introduced and passed on first reading on 7/25/06 and published according to law, is now being taken upon for further consideration in a public hearing. Affidavit of the publication of this ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue 5/28/06 is submitted, and it is noted that a copy of the ordinance, is this right? Yeah, I'm sorry. It was not advertised in the 5/28/06, at least let's hope not.
728.
When the 7/28/06 is submitted, and is noted that a copy of the ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies were available to the general public upon request. Mr. Davis, would you please read the title?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, amending Chapter 188 Land Use to establish a hotel and/or conference center, conditional use in the Highway Development 1 and Highway Development 2 zones.
Okay, we've had the reading of the title. I'm going to open up the meeting. Members of the general public, anyone who'd like to be heard for or against the final adoption of this ordinance, please come forward. Mr. Brannan, you're up first. You stood first. I apologize. Okay. Yes, Mr. Brannan. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good morning.
Good morning. Question for you. If we look at Section H, under Conference Center, it says hotel must have direct access to Route 9 or 33 and shall be no ingress or egress from residential streets. What happens?
Mr. Brannan, would you just tip up that microphone? The folks in the audience can't hear you.
What happens with some of the properties that the state would deny access to? It's not one property, there's multiple properties this happens to.
Okay.
If this passes and somebody goes to the state and the state says, we're not going to give you access, what happens? Does that property become unbuildable?
Mr. Newcomb, sir, what's the answer?
Having basically enacted the access code for the state, you can use a local ordinance as a justification in terms of applying for an access permit. So if a township basically denies you access, all right, or basically requires you to have access, you can basically put that on your application to DOT and use that as part of your justification.
The only reason
the other issue is true. I mean, there's going to be situations where, for example, Aldridge Road or something like that, like if you were at the corner where they're going to require you to go to Aldridge. I think on streets that we don't have identified in our master plan as collectors, things of that nature,
right.
I think, in essence, I think DOT will be sympathetic and basically require the access.
The only reason I bring this up, again, because there's been so much talk about where they want to put this hotel, and point blank, if I read that letter correctly that he proposed, DOT has denied them access to Route 9 for egress. So what happens at this point?
I'll address that. From a legal standpoint, this is a conditional use ordinance.
Correct.
So that if they don't meet all the conditions, they then require a use variance. So
it has to go in front of the Board of Adjustment?
Board of Adjustment.
Okay.
And
I just
it
want
is-
that clarified.
It would
That's-
be a D3 variance, as Mr. Gannon was saying, and that's a use variance which
Right.
requires two-third majority vote.
Five
Um,
votes.
5 votes minimum.
The other thing, I've kicked this to death, and I'm going to bring it up again, the height ordinance versus this. There's a difference. There's a difference of 5 feet. Now, I had talked to, I think it was Mr. Chinesky, about this. The height ordinance is a average mean height, if I am not mistaken. So if you have a peaked roof, and tell me if I'm wrong, and hopefully I am wrong, the peak might be at 62 or 65 feet, and the valley might be at 42 feet, and you take your average roof height. Is that
Give me
correct
this-
or not?
Give me this roof again?
Like a Best Buy store where the peak's at 52,
Say
but
it's got a
dips
peaked
down.
roof.
Yeah, but how?
You take your average height, don't you, from peak to valley?
Right, you're at the mid, you take it at the midpoint.
Okay. So my point is, one, it should be, depending on the pitch of the roof, you could look at a peak of roof at 65 feet, depending on what the pitch is. Where I'm going with this is,
I can't see the pitch like that.
it would be a heck of a pitch, I realize
I
that.
mean, not for a non-residential.
Ski season's coming.
But no, my point is, it should match what the HD1 and HD2 zoning height restrictions are at 45 feet. Now, that's the first thing. Second thing is if you don't match it to the other ones, then you're going with a conditional use of a very specific use of 50 feet. If somebody else comes in and says, hey, they're at 50 feet in HD1, you're going to get a court challenge over this.
No, we're not.
I hope I'm
No,
hoping
no.
you're right, because I'm telling
again,
you now, I
again,
think you're
you're
going to...
basically dealing with a conditional use, versus a permitted use. So in essence, an individual can come in and not have to meet any of these. I mean, he knows that he can come in at 45 feet, all right, and that's no requirements,
Right.
no nothing, all right. This is a conditional use, so to get this, you got to meet all the other requirements.
Okay.
Yeah, your question and concern would be much more relevant if it was just a permitted use in a zone.
Okay.
But since it's a conditional, it does, under the law and the case law, it gives the municipality a lot more protection and the ability to regulate it.
Okay. That's really all I had, just those two questions.
You aren't going to
be
get that
clarified.
pitch, believe me.
I understand. I just
Thank you, Mr. Brennan.
trying to
Mrs.
understand.
Weingruber.
Thank you.
Yeah, right.
Suzanne Weingruber, 25 Princeton Drive. I just also, again, want to go on the record about the height. I did have the opportunity to speak to some officials with the Holiday Inn, actually it's Intercontinental. Holiday Inn Expresses, which is precisely what has been named in the application, have a cookie-cutter design. They put basically the same building on every lot. They try to keep them to 2 stories. There are a few in higher density areas where they've gone to 3 stories. They don't build 4 stories. The Marriott in Mystic, Connecticut, big residential area, big resort area, has 3 stories. Most of the Ramadas are not building more than 3 stories. The Marriott courtyards are building 2 stories, on some occasions 3 stories. I'm not sure why we're going to 4 stories, except it appears that we are trying to urbanize Howell a little bit and create high-rise buildings. They're really, the Holiday Inn Express, if you go up there on Route 36, it's 2 stories. If you don't have the amount of land and buildable land to build, then you shouldn't be asking the town to increase the height so that we can just keep going up. And I think the original request had such a high usage on this property that there was going to be an additional banquet center, there was going to be additional retail. As Jack said, the state has denied egress to this site from Route 9, so the point might be moot. But remember, this is a conditional use for the entire town. And you know if you have 50 feet, they're going to come in and ask for a waiver to go to 60 feet. If you have 4 stories, they're going to ask for a waiver for 5 stories. And then they're going to tell you that they're going to sue you. And then they'll offer to settle. I really think you need to think about this height thing, because the majority of residents don't want to see it turned into the city of Howell. We're still the township of Howell. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Feingruber. Who else would like to be heard on this? Mrs. Dixell, this young lady had her hand up before you did. Then we'll get to Mrs. Dixell, then Mr. Howell. Come on up, ma'am. Absolutely. If you just introduce yourself again, please, for the record.
Again, because I don't know how it goes. All right.
Just your, I'm sorry, your name and address.
Barbado, 21 Woodland Drive.
Thanks, Ms. Barbado.
All right. Just clarify, for tonight, the vote is, it's either vote yes for the ordinance as is, or it could be tabled for further discussion.
Or it could be voted down completely.
Up or down, okay. Can you use the visual aids?
Sure you can.
Okay. Can you guys vote even though Mr. Schumacher's not here?
Even
You
though-
guys can vote?
Yes, we have a quorum.
Okay, you quorum, okay. All right. And then I'm allowed to ask questions?
Of course.
Feedback? All right, all right. In terms of the ordinance itself, take a deep breath. It's late, so I won't ask for the 10 best reasons. Why? Give me a few reasons why we need a hotel in Howell.
Go ahead, Mr. DePasco.
I know what you said.
My wife is calling to see where I'm at. I have to excuse myself.
I'll just deal with it from the quality of life issue. You know, there's 52,000 people in this town. Just want to have family come in and you need a place to go. There are some places. We have various organizations that want to put on functions for various things, and the maximum size we have right now, I think Southern holds about 225, and our house holds about the same. There's no place you can really go to that holds more than that, except to go out of town. And even the chamber right now, when they have their annual dinner dance, it's too small. They have to go out of town now to hold that. So we had it to Ramada last year. So we're also close enough to the shore and the Great Adventure where we're a tourist destination. We have a major interstate highway right there. We're one spot you're very concerned about. But we're not just talking about that one spot with this ordinance, too. We're talking about for the entire town. This is a conditional use for the entire town. So we have Highway 33 in one section. We have Highway 9. Those are our two major arteries. Highway 9, if you go all the way down, you can hit Atlantic City eventually. To go all the way up, you hit Newark. 33 goes to Trenton, goes out towards Neptune and Asbury Park. So we happen to have a number of quality of life reasons as to why hotels are interested in coming here. We don't even have to market for it. They're all interested in coming. We had the Days Inn up on 33 that was looking at us for a while. That was originally going to be a Hilton where the 195 and Route 9 intersection is. But those are the main reasons. There's a tourist trade here in New Jersey, of which the spot of 9, meaning 195, is a good location. It's close enough to the shore and the Great Adventure. Forgetting Howell. Howell has a lot of entities that would benefit from having a banquet facility. And we do have 52,000 people that when their families come in and they can't put them up, there's not enough rooms right now to accommodate all those people. So there's 3 reasons, right? There's probably a lot more, but those are 3 off the top of my head.
Okay.
Eagle Oaks Golf Club, for the record, will be done probably in the middle of November, and I believe the capacity will be 275 to 300.
Where's
And that's right here in Howell Township.
What was that? I didn't.
Eagle Oaks Golf Club.
I think it's going to be 350 from what Todd was saying.
350, I'm sorry, Mr. Tabasco. 350 are going to be there. It's going to be able to hold. So there will be some places that hold more than 225 in Howell Township. It's under renovations right now.
But we need more than one. There's just many needs.
Okay. All right, and just curious, there is a minimum of 60. Is there a reason why there's not a maximum?
Of 60 rooms you're talking about?
60 rooms for the hotel, sorry.
There's probably good reasons why there's a minimum, because we don't necessarily want, as other people have brought up, long-term residences
Yes, I
that are pretending to be
appreciate that.
hotels.
The problem's going to be filling them.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, if you're putting a limit on, you're putting on 7 quote acres, then would you contain, put a maximum on what you can put on that acreage?
We actually talked about that
Well,
elsewhere
you do
tonight. We had a.
in terms of FAR, number
Right.
of stories, and also lot area, in terms of coverage, because you have to deal with parking and things of that nature, so you are kind of maxing out a certain number of units. Because if you recall, one of the changes we did make at the request of the public was, not only we have every room, you're adding a parking space, so, you kind of, start chewing up, your land, so to speak.
Okay. Can you give examples as retail and personal service facilities? Like, give me examples of what that would be.
Gift store, flower shop.
Convenience stuff.
Coffee shop,
Restaurant.
All those various types of things.
And then on this property, would it also at the same time allow what's traditionally included under HD1 and HD2? So this is in addition to what's allowed?
That's correct.
Right.
So they could do like a banquet center and, well, it does say it has to be, it does have to be
with banquet
accessed.
facilities. And this was brought up at the planning board meeting, and, in other words, one of the planning board members questioned, could I just build a banquet facility? And I think the way that with the board, the planning board, and I think the council's approaching it, it's hotel and banquet facility.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, in other words, it's, the hotel is like the driver of the, the banquet facility.
But if they can use HD.
And most towns do it that way.
Okay.
Okay. You're, I think, talking about principal use. In other words, I think we're looking at this as the principal use. There is a provision in the township's ordinance that allows, for example, shopping centers, because you won't just have one store, you have multiple stores. So the shopping center in its totality is looked at as one principal use. There's another provision for offices, like you might have a series of offices, like satellite offices, or what they call condo offices. There allows for multiple use. I think the council's, and I don't want to speak for council, but I think after the public testimony that we had, we were looking at this being like the sole principal use on the property.
But it's not stated that way, so it could be interpreted differently?
Well, you would have to change the other portion of our ordinance, which basically says, only multiple type things that you can have are shopping centers, office, industrial, and planned unit developments. I mean, I think, or something like that is the other provision. I have the
Okay.
ordinance here.
I don't know, yeah. In terms of the requirements listed there, like how close can you come to a residential area, to a residential property?
Well, you would have, our ordinance requires a 50-foot buffer from any non-residential use to a residential use. So there would be a requirement, automatic requirement, no matter whether it's a hotel or, Joe's hoagie shop or whatever. There would have to be a 50-foot buffer, which nothing can be built in that buffer.
Joe's Pizza, okay?
Can
Joe's Pizza, I'm sorry.
can we increase that requirement? Again, because you're dealing with such a large piece of development in terms of hotel, banquet, parking. Could we design the ordinance such that it can be a much bigger buffer to protect the residents?
Well, I think my concern there has been that if you don't do it for the whole, you don't increase the buffer for all non-residential development, I think we're going to probably set ourselves up for some type of litigation.
However, this is such a big project, it's such a big change for how there should be special considerations.
When you say project, you mean
This,
this
I don't know what to
ordinance
call
in
this.
total?
This ordinance, in terms of
The
a
ordinance in
hotel,
total.
banquet center, health club, pool, so, this is a major, it's like Kohl's, it's whatever, but at the same time,
The
it's
buffers,
such
the
impervious.
50-foot buffer also must be screened. You just don't have like 50 feet of no man's land. the ordinance requires for it to be landscape screened, all those, various things, so it's just not 50 feet and that's it.
Okay.
But again, I mean, if you're changing it, I mean, you're probably looking at, the need to change it in all the.
But you're
HC1
changing something
zones.
just here by putting an ordinance here for a hotel, you're changing something. Am I too
Say that
simple-minded?
again?
Again, you're changing things right now because you're putting want to put a hotel in.
No.
So why can't? No?
That
Okay, I just
honestly,
said I
yeah.
don't know that.
Yeah, there is someone who is, there was a business, we've told that they're since perhaps no longer interested in coming to Howell, but there was a applicant who made request or was going to put a petition through to have an application to put a hotel in 195. This is not designed to address any specific potential hotel or any specific applicant at all. This is an ordinance that speaks to the entire zone.
And I'm treating it as that.
Absolutely.
And you'll see where I'm going.
But we're not, certainly, we're not
You
doing
have
this
the
to.
50-foot buffer,
Uh-huh.
first of all, and then you have setback requirements, all right, in the HD1 and HD2 zones. So, for example, you have, not only you'll have the 50-foot, all right, and then you'll have the bulk requirements for that
Wait,
zone.
backtrack. We're talking from the property line. We're talking about a residential property line.
Say it starts 50 feet, and then you're going to have the bulk requirements, which for the HD1 zone requires a side yard to be 25 feet or the height of the principal building. So if the height is 50 feet, the side yard has to be another 50 feet.
Okay.
All right? So in essence, you're talking about 100 feet right there
Okay.
in terms of the building.
Okay.
If I could just add to that, with respect to the new community design standards we just adopted, where there is a commercial parking lot adjacent to a residential neighborhood, a year-round impervious screen must be provided.
And define what and give an example of what
Like a hedge, a hedge, a wall, or
It would have to be 4 seasons, which means that it has to be green all year round, or,
You mean like evergreen?
yeah. Zig Panic always likes to call them 4 seasons, so,
All right, my other concern too was this, the egress to the, egress to the residential street. Again, this is a little site-specific. They're so confident about that area, it makes me scared that there's a loophole somewhere in there on that one. And then also, would that also include like emergency access? Would that be allowed on a residential street?
why would you have an emergency access? I don't.
Because the hotel banquet slash is such a big piece of property that you may want to have, well, even like Kohl's Shopping Center, looks like they, I don't know if that was an emergency, I'm calling an emergency area, like towards the back of the building onto Locust.
Okay.
Would you be able to put something like that onto a residential road? For
The catch there is what do they define as residential? For example, where you folks are worried about Northwoods, part of that's actually owned by the state, so how much of it is residential or not? Now, Joe is right. The hotel that was interested in being there isn't necessarily interested in being there anymore, just so you all know that. So this is really a general ordinance that we're talking about tonight.
Yeah.
But you bring up a good example.
And it will be.
Because
It is.
the DOT wants only one cutout onto their major highways, and they want, especially on a corner lot, they want the other cutout to be on the side. So the definition of a residential road versus what is a non-residential road needs to be more clear, I guess, because they will want the fire trucks going out the side
Well,
as opposed to the main.
Yeah,
that kind
but
of thing.
I mean, in terms of fire equipment, I mean, you can design things that only the fire equipment can basically handle. In terms of curb, bow, chains, things of that nature across, so that in essence only the fire company has a key to basically take off the lock and stuff like that. So.
any address about animals in the hotel? Is that pertinent information should be included? Animals allowed in the hotel?
I mean, if you
Should that
bring
be
your
like
pet
a
with you
pet
on vacation
on
for a week.
vacation.
Because somebody I know who worked for a hotel chain said one of their problems were animals left in cars or animals like staked to a tree to adjacent properties because they weren't allowed in the rooms.
Up to the hotel, I guess, whether they have pets or not.
Haven't heard that one.
Yeah, I guess it's something that we would have just as much a concern on other situations of people leaving their pets in the cars. That it sounds like it's an enforcement issue. I mean, I can't imagine that.
From my limited travel experience with my mother-in-law, who has a little French poodle, a lot of the even nicer chain hotels set aside 2 or 3 rooms if you happen to have a pet, but that's more of their policy than it is ours until it becomes a matter of public health. And if it reaches that level, we would have the health department deal with it.
Okay. And let's see.
Sure, what else do you have, Ms. Corbett?
And then my other concern, which was also voiced at that public meeting, was about the banquet center having 1 parking spot for 3 spaces. I attend conferences for my job.
For 3 people, you mean? One?
Yeah, 1 parking space for 3 seats. I have a very big issue with that. Even just going, my girlfriend gave me an example of the one in Manalapan, I'm going to say.
Excelsior.
Yes. Over and over again, she's been to events there, and they do not have room for parking. I don't know where they go, but they can't find it. And I've been to conferences at banquet centers with hotels where there's not enough space because most of us are coming alone in the car. Now, okay, you have a different situation if it's used for a wedding, or Sweet 16, you're coming as a family, but if you're using this facility as a conference center,
Well,
there's no guarantee that you're going to have 1 to 3.
conference center, I mean, the requirement for the conference center and accessory meeting spaces is 10 spaces per 1,000 square foot. So I think we try, I mean, again, that was in response to the public's comment about the inadequacy of the original requirement in terms of parking. So I think what we've done is we've said, okay, first of all, there's 1 space per room plus 10, an additional 10 even beyond the number of rooms. And then we have 1 space per every employee, all right? And then we have 10 spaces per 1,000 square foot of gross floor area for meeting and conference space. And then associated restaurants and banquet facilities, we have the 1 for 3. So, I mean, I think there's ample park.
Just give me perspective.
Add that all up.
Yeah, I actually did. Not to mention that
1,000 square feet is not very big.
No, but like we'll just say like average. We'll say an average hotel is 100. Or we'll say 3-story hotel is 120 rooms.
Right.
So there's 120 spaces right there.
Plus 10.
Plus 10, that's 130. Just say you have 75 employees on for the morning.
You wouldn't have that many.
Well, okay, that's just hotel, banquet center, we're talking.
Okay, well,
okay. And then you're talking
10 spaces per every 1,000 square foot.
Right, so we're figuring maybe, what do you think, 7, 8? I don't know. Name of what you think it would be.
All right.
Well,
This room is about 40 by 50, just to use it as an example.
yeah. I mean, is this 40 by 50?
It looks about that.
Yeah, but they wouldn't have 1.
We're talking,
Maybe 35,
and
I
then
think.
if you have 100, we'll say you have 450 seating, that's 150 cars. We're talking like 300, am I adding right? 5, 10, 16, 3, 4, 11, 16. We're counting over 300 parking spots.
Some of our shopping centers don't have that much.
Okay, so let's, there's a perspective there, okay? All right. Now, I think I need a mobile mic. That was just the basics. Now I get to the emotional part. As a resident, wake up. Do we have a mobile mic?
We're going to have a stage performance?
No, no.
I think she wants to hang up a map.
No, not even. I'll just show you. Okay.
If you can use the mic
Show
at the
us.
end, you can kind of carry it on a lower
Give her
level.
the mobile mic.
Yeah,
Let's
get-
go.
Have a handheld mic.
She asked for it.
No, just, I want to talk.
That's fine.
And I
Yeah,
can
good.
stand up to do it well.
He's pulling it out. Floor is yours. It's on. No?
And I'm not putting on a show. This is really serious.
Absolutely. Take your time.
All right. No. I'm okay. Okay. Who's? Okay. There are many residents who are unhappy with this ordinance. All right. Many are not here tonight because they feel as if citizens can't make a difference at this meeting tonight. Statements like from Mr. Chamberlain, he has made it seem like it's such a done deal for this, Bob, the Chamber of Commerce president.
Bob Fayes?
Fayes? He makes comments as if to say this is a done deal. So
He doesn't vote on this. We do.
all right, so people are very discouraged. So even though I'm just one person up here, I am representing other people. I speak to you as a citizen. I respect your knowledge. I don't have the engineering background. I know there's been committees and council meetings on this, so I do not take this lightly. But obviously I have no political gain. I have no money gain. I'm here as a citizen to encourage you to maintain the environment and quality of life for the residents. Okay? I also want to say that I'm here like an inexperienced lawyer before a jury with the goal to put a reasonable doubt in your mind. So you will either deny this ordinance or really seriously go back and think about it. Okay. I called several townships to find out about the hotels that I've heard that they're going in the area to address one of your issues that we don't have hotels in the area. Lakewood is putting one in on Route 70. That's 120 rooms, and I want to stress it's on 8 acres. It is 2 restaurants included. The wall is a Courtyard Marriott. It will be 113 rooms, 3 stores, an office, and that is on 9 acres. Freehold, which is right on Route 9 before Shank Road, that is going to be 104 rooms, a child care, office building, a restaurant, and a bank. All of these are 3-story buildings. And mind you, 3 stories on, this is on, how many acres? Somebody look this up. So I just want to illustrate on a map, which I'll pass down, that the need is not so great anymore to have a hotel. But you know what? It's all within 15, 20 minutes, no matter where you live. Howell is a big spot. If you even put it over here on Route 9, if you live in Ramtown, it will take you 15 minutes to get here. So I'm going to pass
It just proves there's a need. The demographics from all these hotels are saying we need to put rooms here. You're actually giving an argument why it should be here.
No, I'll give you past your map. Like we're like right in the center of these 4 hotels. There's one in Jackson that I'm not sure where. Okay. See how that essentially. In addition to that, I can only address Route 9. All right, I'm not familiar with 33. I know you've seen this map over and over and over again. All right. This hotel ordinance, in my heart, is not appropriate for Route 9 development. In theory, yes, but not in reality. If you look at the orange, that's HD1 of Route 9. And so much of it is not just HD1, but it's also wetlands. So maybe down below on the southern part, there might be a little bit more developable area, but you're squeezing it in. You're squeezing it with small businesses. You're squeezing it with old residential homes. It's not a sweet fit. I don't know. I can't speak for 33. There does seem to be a little more area there. Yes? I make an impression. I mean, look at that little strip. Look how big Howell is.
They won't go where they can't go. They need land to put their stuff in. So if they go to a spot and it's wet, they're not going to build there.
Well, that's an argument because people find a way to get around it.
No, they don't.
I mean, first of all, in terms of wetlands, and you also have C1 waters. So you're going to have to meet the state's requirement in terms of the 300-foot buffer. I don't think you're going to get, people aren't going to get around that. And we're talking about 7 developable acres. In those other towns that you mentioned, I question whether they are basically developable acres or they are gross total acres. So,
Well-
I mean, I don't want,
No,
but
when
I'm
I
just
asked
saying-
Freehold that question, they said it's dry land. There really was no wetlands around it. The one in Wall has to do with.
That's not the point
Okay.
I'm trying to make. I'm trying to the point I'm trying to make is that you have to have 7 developable acres. Again, we responded to the public with that. That was one of the issues that was raised. And, so you can't have wetlands. You can't have, C1 waterway buffers. You can't have, you can't have those things. So in essence, you have a lot of requirements which are going to probably make your map even a little more stringent.
So that's why I'm just pointing out for Route 9. It may not be appropriate place for the
Let me
hotel.
ask you to hold up one moment. Who else here would still like to speak on this? A show of hands. Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Barbado. If you could
Okay.
just conscious
I
of these
know,
other
I
folks,
know.
please.
I'm also going to pass pictures around. Some of the points you already brought up about how when you put a development in, what do you would call this?
The development.
Okay. You have to put, would you say, a impervious or a boundary between the property and the residential. It's easy for you to say that, but in 10, 15, 20 years from now, who will be here to maintain it, or what will it look back like? So I took a quick drive up and down Route 9 today, and let me show you what some of these walls look like from, this is behind the corporate building. It's fencing, it has holes in it, it has slats to support it.
Could I ask you, Ms. Barbado, maybe you could just give us the pictures in total and summarize a high level of what they are rather than each
Focus
one,
on.
please?
Then you talk about putting the evergreens in. Sometimes they're not appropriate. You take down these beautiful trees and you put these little evergreens in. And then what happens years from now when they're dying and they're too big? Who takes care of it? I'm sure you have rules about sanitation and how something looks. I'm concerned about the garbage and how it's stored. If it's facing Route 9, it's facing 195. It's easy to say that we have these regulations, but then the reality is what is done.
If it stinks,
Then one of our biggest pet peeves as citizens is the drainage centers, the drainage pits. All right, here's 2 examples of, it's just mosquito stagnant water that aren't draining, so they don't work. I asked you about the emergency access road because there is one, I don't know if that's exactly what it is, off of Coles. When you see this, it looks terrible. You say it's like the fire department has access to it, but this is a wooden thing that looks just terrible that a residential house has to look at. These are things to consider, that you're dealing with a residential home with a massive structure being put next to it.
Ms. Barbado, one of these, just so that you know, this is a detention basin, so that's why there's water in it.
That's the word I want to say. But we haven't had rain in forever. So if it's...
It always has water.
But they...
Oh,
That's the way
okay.
it's designed.
That's the way they're designed.
But then it's also, isn't mosquito beating material?
But there are standards in terms of how large they need to be, depending on the size of the development, how much water they should be able to maintain. I mean, it's...
Then there's like the ones, the drainage pipe. You would think it would drain. No?
Well,
Okay, I understand what
Under
you're saying.
state law, right now, you're basically required to do recharge. So they are just what they're called retention basins now, and they recharge the ground.
Ms. Barbado, honestly,
I
just
know.
in the interest of time, other people want to speak.
But I do want to just put...
Please,
again,
just give
you
us a
can-
summation of what
you
these
can
pictures
make a
are, and we'll
point-
look at every one
You
of
can make a
them.
point of anything. Garbage is left behind, there's debris left behind when you have major building like that. As I drove down Route 9, really taking a good look at our town, again, not so much appropriate for Route 9, because we are like Route 1 in New Brunswick in terms of traffic. So I can't really see us putting something major as a hotel on it.
Okay.
We are also look like a shore community. I know we're changing things, but right now we look like a short community that we used to, I was trying to put a name to it, that we drive, when we used to drive decades ago, down to the shore. Just look at the building.
Ms. Barbados, I hate to ask you this, but if you could attempt to please,
All right.
give us your conclusions. We do want to make certain that other people get to speak. It's just about 1 o'clock in the morning.
I just want to say the other thing is traffic. Intersections get blocked, peak hours. That's the reality when we have a large structure put in.
Okay, what else, Ms. Barbados?
All right, I'll summarize. All right. In conclusion, we are a modest community. I really think that we should have a modest hotel if we put it in. I don't think we can change the 3 stories down to 3 because we have the ordinance for 4. Somehow I'd like to make sure that there's no way that a hotel could maneuver for 5. All right.
If you were to make the ordinance 2 stories, someone could go to the zoning board and ask for something. There's nothing you can prohibit anyone. They could do it with a house. They can do it.
All right, and that's what I wanted to say.
It's a use variance.
Let's try not to make this
pretty difficult to achieve that threshold. That's a fair point.
You need a 2/3 number, minimum of the members of the zoning board, 5 members, so it's still, it's not easy.
All right. The other thing is, I just want to make it hard for developers to come in here. I want them really, you are changing the landscape of Route 9 or 33, whatever, with this hotel. It's your chance to make a difference. I know you've had so many headaches from other town councils who perhaps didn't think ahead. I just want you to truly think ahead, that make it hard for the developers to come in. Make it large acreage. Make it 10 acres so that you can bend a little bit or compromise. If you say 7 buildable acres, then
That's
you know
big.
they're going to push. You know that they're going to push 7.5 acre building to squeeze it into the 7 acres. They're going to keep going. So build it bigger and make them conform to us. And truly, I would like to see HD1 taken off the ordinance, because I do not think it's appropriate. There's not too much, unless you do the southern part of HD1. Up north, the effect between Northwoods, if you do Fort Plains roads, they're all bordered homes and small businesses or wetlands. All right. And then actually, we'd just like to see you remove this, because I don't see a need for a hotel anymore. With the 4 hotels in the area, you're telling them there's a banquet center. Perhaps we need more banquet centers. And if more than anything else, with the pictures I sent around for about how we really need, as you said, with the town planner, to revitalize how. Work on that rather than putting a big hotel in and put a stress on all our services. Traffic, pollution, air, noise, compressors. I know one point I want to bring out too. Things that you never expect. I talk to people behind coals. Things like Petco. Do you know animals get loose? I guess you do know. People find mice in their pools because they escape from Petco. So there's so many little things that when you put a big development in that you don't think ahead of time. So better to think that just protect us, that's all.
Okay. Thank you for your comments, Ms. Barbados.
Thank you very much.
We
Appreciate all your research.
And thanks for giving us your time. Mr. Howell, you're next, sir. Mrs. Dixell, you're up after.
Gotta go.
Yes, sir, Mr. Howell.
If we just left this with the zoning board, we could have went home by now.
If what?
If we just left this as a zoning change, we could have went home by
We
now.
all so enjoy being here.
Michael Howell, 1A Newton's Corner Road. I have a question, just looking at the ordinance. If the hotel built without a conference center, in this first section, 188-87.1, there's no requirements for building or anything. That only falls in once you add the conference center. Or am I just not reading it
Hotel
the right way?
Indoor Conference Center, Section 1.
Mr. Newcomb, can you respond to that?
There's an indoor there.
Indoor.
If you just look at the front of the ordinance, it says hotel, and then it says what it means it is, but it doesn't say what it needs to be built. That doesn't come in until it becomes a conference center, and then that needs a hotel.
Well, it should be, the hotel is subject to the following requirements. It is required. those requirements are applicable to it.
All right, I just wanted to make sure
Okay.
that that wasn't something that was left out. Now, if there's a pre-existing application that's not, it's not complete, or it's sitting in a planning board or zoning board, is that's going to
not
be
complete.
grandfathered?
No.
Only
It would have-
completed applications.
It would have to come immediately.
It would have to have been
It
deemed
would have
complete to be
it would
exempt from the new
actually-
law.
Actually, Joe, it would have to have preliminary approval.
Oh, okay,
It
I'm
would have
sorry,
to-
that's
okay.
right. You have to
All
have
right, so it
preliminary.
wouldn't have to be a complete
That's right.
application, and it would already have to have
And
the
there's
first hearing.
no one officially in the pipeline.
All right. Maybe an increase in the buffer would be a good idea due to the late hour, that banquet hall. I know it's, what you're saying is you would have to change it for everything, but since it's a conditional use, couldn't you say it's a condition of your, the requirements for you to build a conference center? I mean, a banquet hall, if you're having a wedding reception, it's getting out at midnight. If it's backing up to a
You
residential
still have
area.
the side yard setbacks in addition to the buffer, too, so it's...
Right, the side yard
Yeah.
setback doesn't have to be dressed, though. It doesn't have to have a four-season buffer. It's still only
Well-
a 50-foot buffer.
But it's 50 foot from.
Plus the side
Yeah,
yard
Plus that
setback.
side yard
the
setback.
buffer has,
But it's still dead air.
the
it's
perimeter
side bar
buffer
setback
has to be basically screened. It's a requirement of our ordinance, and it's actually a variance provision within, you'd have to get a variance to, so it's just not a design issue, it's not a waiver issue. So you'd actually have to get a variance to not basically do something with a perimeter buffer. And we've been very fortunate that our certified tree expert, Zig Panic, has been, very willing to work with, developers and residents that are adjacent to non-residential use to, actually come up with the type of screening that, really protects the residents, doesn't, and then from a maintenance standpoint, we require a minimum of 2 years, and then there's another 2-year performance guarantee that we actually get,
Right,
that
to make
is-
sure that the buffer doesn't die.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I just wanted to throw that out
And
since,
that, if we're not going to allow them to ask for a waiver to make this a 35-foot berm, it's going to have to be that 50-foot buffer, because in some residential applications, if they don't have the 50 feet, we say you're going to do 35-foot, but it's got to be a
well,
berm.
they don't get that, they can request that, but the
Right.
board ultimately gets
Can we
the
make
last
that
call.
non-
And with Zig doesn't like berms, so you aren't going to get a berm. I don't know why we have that.
But
in
is
our
there a way that we
ordinance
can
anymore.
put that in there that says, no, you can't, don't even come bother? Don't bother asking.
Well, I don't think, I can't see our board basically giving it,
Okay.
granted.
What happens if the DOT denies the applicant the permission on Route 9 and he claims it as a hardship? Can he just then come in and say, well, you have to let me onto the side road?
No?
I don't know, what's the law on that?
can't imagine.
Again, I
think
think
I addressed
with
that.
Aldridge Road, those roads that are in our circulation plan are considered collectors and stuff like that. I think that may be, definitely DOT will in essence do that. I think if requiring them, as we have, if the applicant goes to DOT, I think, has a better chance of getting that access if, his alternative is some residential street, I think we can, force the issue. I don't think applicants are too forceful with DOT, and I think they can be a little more forceful.
Okay. And then finally, we're requiring one parking space per employee. How do we determine that, what that is? There may, a hotel and a banquet center may have more employees in the summer than it does in the winter.
Well,
So what do
we
is there an
require,
average?
as part of a submission, even on a restaurant or a store or something like that, the way the planning board functions presently is that we'll have the owner, all right, or the operator of whatever non-residential use it is give us a number of employees. All right, so we require that. We require that for several reasons. One, not only for parking, but also for growth share purposes in terms of meeting their council on affordable housing requirement.
All right. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Howell. Mrs. Dixell, come on up. What do you have, Mrs. Dixell? Good
I'm not
evening.
going to be long.
Good. Take your time.
It's not going to be long.
Okay.
Just want to bring, okay.
Barbara Dixell, The Villages.
Barbara Dixell, The Villages, Howell Township. The supposed applicant,
There is no applicant that we can entertain.
Northwood Center LLC, according to 6706.
Mrs. Dixell, I think it would be fair to suggest that we are.
It's signed by the applicant.
I understand, but I think that the point is that we cannot entertain an ordinance based on any one particular applicant.
Okay, I understand that, but there's something assigned, and the guy, whoever it is, whether it's complete or not, is applying to the state of New Jersey for reissuance of an LOI. I don't know why they don't come here. They're going to the state of New Jersey. They're going to go like Scudera did or somebody.
The LOIs are issued by the state of New Jersey.
Okay, well, anyway, state of New Jersey, transition
That's a good reason.
area plan. He's
I'm
applying
getting punched out.
for clear-cutting trees and/or vegetation, placement of pavement and other impervious surface. Our Environmental Commission, 2006. LOI doesn't recognize the C1 stream, is on site and needs appropriate 300-foot buffer. Environmental impact statement not acceptable, not done by qualified environmentalist.
You're talking about one spot again.
Mrs. Dixell, again, I think if we were having a hearing at the planning board on an application, all of that would be terrific testimony, but we're not talking about a specific application or a specific area. We're looking at the zone.
I know that, but, okay. Well, that's what they were addressing to this Northwood Center. So you know what? I'm just going to give you copies of this. I have a letter from the DEP.
Okay.
Says, and this was June 12th of 2006, that the site consists of dense mature woods. In this case, no reduction of the 300-foot buffer is allowed.
Right.
That's correct.
Right.
So, do you want any of this?
Why don't you give it to Mr. Newcomb? He should keep it in his
Actually,
file.
we've seen it all in our packets. The
Because
stuff she's talking about.
I was given a copy of this, and I'm going to send it off, and I don't think that if they are doing this, that, it shouldn't be done. If there is an applicant, it shouldn't be
I'll
done.
take a copy of it. If you,
Please, yeah,
you
put it in
know,
file.
I'd
If
appreciate it.
this application does come back,
From
we
what
should
I
see that.
understand, the plans are sitting at the, at the planning board. And I'm going to say something, I'm sorry, I just have to say it. With reference to boards and commissions in Howell Township, when you have sitting members on boards and commissions that come to the governing body and express an opinion, and then go back to the board or commission they're on, and then sit on a case that comes before that, they should be recused or be told to be recused.
Sure. Give us an example of one that
Warren Curry, he's been here many times on this hotel ordinance. He's given his opinion. He said he wants it, he this, he that. It should be, he's been before the council, and it shouldn't be. People in this township who sit on boards and commissions should be told by the manager and/or their attorneys that they should not come to this council to give anybody an opinion. They need to sit in the audience and say nothing, because they're going to go back to a board or commission, hear a case that will affect the township, and they've already come here and said something. They've got a prejudiced opinion. You know what? They should have to be recused or told to get off the board for that case.
You're right.
And I'm sorry, but I have to say that. And I think the township or the manager should get a hold of the planning board attorney and make that clear, and make it clear to the zoning board as well.
said that a number of times to various people.
And Tom Gannon too, because it can't be. Anybody that sits on any board or commission in this town can't come to this council and say, I'm for this, I want 6 stories, I want this, I want that. It can't be.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs.
Thank
Dixell.
you.
Who else would like to be heard, Ms. Dalton? Who after Ms. Dalton? Mr. Smith. Anyone else after Mr. Smith? Anyone else after Mr. Smith? Okay. Ms. Dalton, go ahead.
Angela W. Dalton, 13 Madeline Court. Mr. Newcomb referenced that the dual purpose of the ordinance, the conference center and the hotel, that the conference center would not be permitted without the hotel?
Right.
Okay. Well, that's not what this ordinance says. First of all, conference center shall mean a facility for business or professional conferences and seminars which may contain accommodations for sleeping, eating, and recreation, primarily supporting the conference use. That's may. That's not mandatory. That's permissive. The title of the ordinance is an ordinance, it says and/hotel and/or conference center. And it repeats that on 3 separate places on the first page. Hotel and/or conference center. That's at section 1, H. Section 2, number D is hotel and/or conference center. And again, at 188-87.1, hotel and/or conference center. That slash is called a virgule. There's actually published appellate division case law on the meaning of a virgule. When you use the word and/or, it means or. Or means one or the other, not necessarily both. This ordinance does not read both ways. It does not read hotel, it doesn't read conference center and hotel. It reads hotel or conference center or hotel.
Let me ask you a question, Mr. Dolan, just playing devil's advocate. In the event that that's accurate, what you're suggesting, and let's let these fellows look at it, what would be the downside if someone just built a conference center?
I don't know.
That's what I'm asking. Would there be
I'm just
something
asking
bad
a
if
question.
somebody put a conference center? I mean,
Could
obviously,
someone
they probably
could
wouldn't build it 4 stories, or they
if
could
you look-
potentially.
If you look at the conference center definitions, I mean, I suppose you could wind up with someone being able to use this definition of conference center for a banquet facility by
Sure.
itself.
And maybe there's nothing wrong with that. They have a business conference center in the day, and on a Saturday, they allow someone to have a bar mitzvah or a wedding or whatever the case may be. So is there a downside in the event that it was and/or, that it was or?
People are very concerned about low-income, high-rise hotels.
But no, that wasn't the question. My question was
Right,
about
and-
a conference center.
And the downside, I think, originally would be if you had a hotel without conference center, that may be a concern. I'm raising the issue because there's specific meaning ascribed to that, and, you know, our planner explained.
Well, I
that it's-
think I was more, the planning board was more raising the issue about banquet facilities. Maybe I misspoke, but what I was referring to was banquet facilities having to be tied to, I guess, now either the hotel or a conference center. So, I mean, I apologize if I maybe spoke wrongly, but
We're all human.
that was the issue that was raised by the planning board, was banquet facilities. So, and I did some additional research on it, you know, throughout the state, and there's no one uses banquet facilities as a standalone permitted item, believe it or not.
And
If you go to ordinance.com, you type in banquet facilities, all you do is get it tied to hotels and conference centers.
But I guess the other concern about this low-income hotel issue is
Well, that's in
we've
the
written into the
definition.
law that a guest couldn't reside here for more than 14 consecutive days. And you have to stay overnight. You couldn't go in and rent it by the hour. So if someone, I'm just concerned about creating a culture that we don't want low income this or that. You know, people who have low incomes need a place to live. We're all not independently wealthy. And people who aren't need a place to live.
And I certainly am not against low-income
I
housing, or
understand.
I sit on
I
the
know you
board
didn't
of a
say that.
nonprofit that houses homeless
I
people.
get concerned when we talk about, we're concerned about low income people. We all don't make a lot of money.
My concern in bringing up the issue was when Mr. Newcomb discussed it, and as I read the ordinance as an attorney,
Good
I look at
observation.
these things, and I just happen to know that the and/or is just bad word choice. I never use it in anything I draft.
Our
And
word of the day, vergule.
vergule,
Vergule.
Vergule.
I'll remember that.
Okay.
My son's a lawyer.
Vergule.
You better check with him, get him, straighten you out.
right.
Thank you, Ms. Dalton. Mr. Smith, you shall be the last person to speak on this ordinance this evening. What do you have for us, Mr. Smith?
I'll try and keep it real short. Don Smith, 54 Vanderveer Road, Howell. First of all, I want to thank the council for making a lot of the changes that were requested by the public, but I still oppose the 4 stories. I think 4 stories is totally out of place in Howell Township. Picture a 4-story building, well, we'll say, I'll pick in your neighborhood, Mr. Mayor. Say the Hill Pot Farm decided to sell. They're on 33. can you picture a 4-story hotel on that farm, in that area with the small?
Is it on a highway? Is it on Route 33?
On Route 33, that's a highway development
It's a highway zone?
by what used to be Gabriel's gas station there.
Sure.
I mean, to me, a 4-story hotel there amongst all those other buildings would be so out of place, it would be ridiculous. Now, I just spent a week out in Lancaster, and all the hotels out there, well, there was one 3-story, but the majority of them, and they are hotels, not motels, are 2 stories. There was one 3-story that was set way back off the road with its banquet facility in front of that was a separate 1-story building. It just, 4 stories doesn't fit into Howell. I mean, I moved into Howell in 1963. I had to leave for a few years because I was in the military. When I came back, it was still a nice rural area, but lately, what has been coming in is just totally out of place. It's changing the whole character of the township. And I think we have to bring a halt to it and try and keep Howell what the people moved into for. And I hear the people are still saying that they don't want the 4 stories. 4 stories, sure, it's better than 6, but it's still not the optimal height for the buildings in that area. I think we should stay with the 45-foot height that we have in all the other HD zones. There's a 45-foot maximum. Let it go at 3 stories. I don't see why they can't achieve the hotels that they want with 3 stories. Everybody else seems to do it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. That closes the public portion. What's the pleasure of the council?
Where's the, we'll give our remarks after.
Let's just at least get a motion in a second.
So motion and ordinance, this is wrong again. Motion 06-23 be finally passed and adopted, and that its passage, notice of its passage and adoption be published in the August 19th, 06 issue of the Asbury Park Press by reference to its title only.
We have a motion. This is a second to open up the discussion. Is there a second?
Second, Mayor.
Motion and a second. Under remarks, let's just do it once. Mr. Malave, what are your comments, if any?
Well, it's been going on for several months. We have taken a lot of the public's inputs into consideration. We have changed and amended this original proposal from 6 to 5 to 4, from 3 acres to 5 to 7, and so forth. So I think we have accommodated a lot of the people's concerns. Yeah, it's perfect. No. Are we going to ever please everyone? No. We do need a hotel banquet facility in this township. I'm convinced of that. I am all for it. At some point, perhaps if it doesn't fit, it's not going to be built. We have a lot of restrictions. The height, yeah, it's a concern, but however, because of the for instance, if on 7 acres, I doubt that you could build, when you have so many parking spots that are required, I doubt that you could build 4 stories on 7, 8 acres anyway. So there's a lot of restrictions because of the coverage percentage that it's required and so forth. So I think it's time to move on. I think that a lot of the people had a lot of good comments, and they were really taken into consideration and included into this proposal. So, I think it's time to move on from this. I do want a banquet facility and a hotel in this township. I think that the citizens, the vast majority of the citizens do want a hotel, a conference center to come into town.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Tabasco.
So that's it.
I learned another word tonight, verigue. I like that word, Angela. And it's making me think a little bit here, too, that maybe we should talk about this for a minute or two, the 4 of us. Do we care whether something comes in just as a banquet facility like the Excelsior is in Manalapan there? Or should we have it absolutely say hotel and conference center? Do we care if a hotel comes in without a banquet facility?
No, I think the way we have it expressed, it's hotel, conference center. Banquet facilities have to be part of either one.
I know how you have it worded, but I'm asking us as policymakers,
okay.
do we
Well,
care?
I'm just, sure.
So I would open that up for discussion. When I think about it, I know we need hotels, but I also know we need banquet facilities. If somebody came in and didn't want to put up a hotel, but just wanted to put up a banquet facility, is that necessarily bad? That's fine in my mind, but let's talk about it for a minute.
I don't have a problem with it. Mr. Malabe?
I have no issue with that either, but I prefer it to be a hotel banquet facility.
So you want to poll everybody on that particular point?
Yeah.
Mr. Walsh?
I prefer that it's both of them together also. And I wish it had been worded that way.
Well, we can still affect it tonight.
Could we vote amending that particular wording, or?
So we're going to vote for, let's say we vote in full, but we want to say hotel and conference center instead of and or.
Is that a substantive amendment, Mr. Gannon? Can we do that? Rather than and or, it's got to be and?
Probably is a substantive amendment.
Well, I
We
think
can
you
pass.
said...
We've done that all the times, where we have amended an
Right.
ordinance
And we
at
just
the
vote the
time of
next one.
voting.
Right, then you have to
You gotta
have
re-advertise.
have a public hearing on the amendment.
Substantive
I mean, I was going to suggest that in the definition that where it says, I don't know if it was my office or whatever, it might have been a typo or whatever, where the ingress and egress from all the rooms, we should make that shall be made through the inside office or lobby. That would be a minor, amendment, but right now it reads hotel and or conference center. And again, as a conference center could be a facility for business professional, which may contain accommodations for sleeping, eating, and recreation. So I don't know if this would allow a banquet facility to be placed in here either, though. That's my legal opinion.
So you could have a hotel with a conference center, or you could have a hotel, or you could have a conference center. So those would be the
Right.
three things that you could potentially
And
build.
a conference
Is that right?
center would be different from a banquet hall.
Correct.
Like, what's the Garden State Exposition Center considered to be up by 287 up there? It's a conference center, right? So are we saying by the way this is worded, that could actually be allowed in without a hotel?
Yeah, it's not a bad
Yeah.
thing.
Just,
Facility for business or professional conferences, seminars.
I
Mr.
think,
Chudzinski, what do you
So
have?
is-
I think
do we
under-
want that,
under
or do we want it
the,
to
uh,
absolutely have to be a hotel, is what I'm asking us as policymakers here.
under most of the commercial standards, a restaurant, which could be considered a banquet facility, is allowed anyway, under current zoning.
Hmm.
So banquet facilities
Yeah,
are permitted.
As Chuck indicated, banquet facility generally is assumed under the restaurant.
Yeah, okay. So then I'll pose the question to our council sitting here again. Do we care whether it's just a conference center that comes on its own?
Well, I think Mr. Malabe said he was fine, I don't want to put words in his mouth, whether it was a conference center or a hotel. I think you said, the high level, whether it was a conference, that Mr. Walsh said he preferred it to be the same, to be
Well, he said it
integrated.
had to be both,
Right, he
integrated.
wanted it to be
I
integrated.
want it to be worded correctly.
So it's got to be, well, I don't know if it's worded correctly, but it's
We're just
worded
taking your opinion right now.
specifically whether you want them both.
Do you want it to be integrated?
Is there a correct
can it
or an
be separate?
incorrect here?
No,
So it's a matter of how we want it to be.
exactly.
So you could have,
In other words, oftentimes you have a conference center that may have as an accessory a restaurant, or you may have a hotel which, as part of its project, is also has rooms that will lend itself to business meetings and that type of thing. But if you really want to push, I mean, either way, this gives you the option of having both. I mean, there's a hotel, and they want to have accessory uses. It says they have to go through the main lobby, and they have to be accessory, and they can't be standalone.
Personally, I'm a little bit thrown. We've been talking about this for 4 months, and at the 11th hour, come to find out it's not worded the way we've been talking about it for 4 months. Because unless I'm wrong, and I'm sure I could be wrong, But we've been talking the whole time, and the two are combined.
So question, I guess I just don't understand what the downside is if they're not. I mean, if
That's
there's a meaningful, let me try that again. If there's a meaningful downside that we don't identify, then maybe we need to know what it is. I mean, if there's something that is
Well, I
a
mean,
problem, has it been constructed wrong throughout?
I mean, I'm looking at it, and the conference center complements the hotel. If you have a conference center, I mean, you could solve it if you want to guarantee there is accommodations for sleeping, instead of saying which may, just say shall contain accommodations.
So
I mean,
if
that's
you change
one way
that
to do
one
it.
word, it shall, this would be a combined issue again. Okay.
Yeah,
Is that
you
a substantive
you
change?
couldn't have one without, but it being a conjunctive, so.
Is that a substantive change?
No,
We
I
can
think
do
in this
that.
case that,
Okay.
you know.
So does anyone disagree that we shall change this so that it would be one and the same to the word shall?
Well, I'm still not convinced that we couldn't just have a conference center and still have that be good. Let's say somebody wanted to put something on 33.
I guess, but they could
up
do
by
that.
Earl or whatever, and you're close to 34.
But there wouldn't be anything that would stop them from putting a conference center in now.
Yeah, none would stop
Right?
them now.
But
Somebody
what
can put a
Mr.
conference
Gannon's
center in.
suggesting is that it has to have.
It's gotta be
it
shall.
have accommodations for sleeping, eating, and.
I mean, the word,
Without the
and if the
hotel.
wording's not changed, and it's ambiguous like that, what will happen? Because what does that mean? Hotel / or conference center. It means either or. Is that correct?
Well, he's saying add the word shall.
If you add the word
Tell-
shall,
Tell me,
it's
tell
gotta
me
be
in
one and the
this,
same.
in this where you put the word shall. So
Well, in the definition of conference center,
Next page.
in other words, if you don't want to have a standalone conference center, which,
shall contain accommodations for sleeping.
so, I mean, you're really getting semantical if you put it in there, but then somebody says, oh, well, I'm going to build a conference center. You're going to have to build rooms for the
You
people.
got to build a
there.
hotel, and it has to comply with our hotel ordinance.
All right, if you change that word to shall, all right.
So shall would make certain, without any ambiguity, I want to be clear. If we have the word shall,
Which shall contain
they
accommodations.
must build a hotel if they're going to build a conference center. You could
Well, they have
not
to
just build a
accommodations
conference center.
For sleeping, yeah,
And it would have to comply with this ordinance.
right.
So
An
the word,
accommodation for sleep, it couldn't just be like a dorm barrack built onto the side. Like 100 fraternity guys coming down, all bungalowing up.
Well, that's what keeps lawyers in business, but
it just depends on the pleasure of the council.
I'm okay with it staying integrated. I just was just postulating, maybe we
Mr.
should.
Malave, are you okay with this amendment to shall so that this remains integrated?
Mayor, and I had that other technical one that's in the definition of hotel.
Okay.
That should be changed to shall also, Bruce.
Can you give me a page number
Yeah,
on that,
where are
please?
you? What letter?
188-87.1.
Just say that again slow. 188.
First page, look at where it says hotel definition, I'm sorry, do you have that?
Just so that when I read it out loud, it's 188
Dash 187.1.
dash, I'm sorry, dash 87.1. And we're changing what to what?
In the middle of the paragraph, there is a may be, it talks about ingress and egress to
Oh, yeah, I
and from
see.
all rooms.
Shall be
may.
made through an inside office, not may be made.
We had talked about
Okay.
that we wanted it.
Maybe to shall be. And what's the
Shall.
second change? Mr. Gannon, give me the item number again, please, sir.
And
Conference
then
center definition.
under
Shall
the
contain
definition of
accommodations,
conference center,
Which is the next page.
shall mean a facility for business or professional conferences and seminars, which, instead of saying may,
Okay.
insert which shall contain
Let
accommodations.
me ask the
for
maker of the
sleeping.
motion if he would be willing to amend his motion to, in addition, incorporate an amendment to 188-87.1, replacing maybe to shall be, and in the definition of conference center, insert the word shall in place of maybe.
I absolutely am okay with that amendment.
And will the seconder of the amendment agree to, I'm sorry, the seconder of the motion agree to the amendment?
Yes.
Okay, so we have an amended motion on the floor, which is to adopt this ordinance with said changes as recorded by council. Are there any additional comments from the council? We were going right down the line. Mr. Walsh, comments?
You know, it's 1:30. I'm tired. I'm not happy about this. I haven't been happy about this one from the beginning. So I truthfully don't know exactly what you expect of me at this time. Do you expect me to vote on this?
Yeah, we are.
I think that's what all these people are waiting for us to vote on it. I'm not going to tell you how to vote, but they're all waiting here thinking we're going to do something
You
here.
know, I've never thought we should be redoing all of Route 9 and Route 33, so God bless you. Whatever you decide is okay with me. You know, I'll vote my conscience.
That sounds like a varigule to me. And
Yeah, I mean, I just don't, you know, I never thought we should have rezoned all of Route 9 and 33.
We haven't what are you talking about? Rezoned it.
Are we passing an ordinance that this could be a conditional use on all of Route 9 and 33?
A conditional use, yeah, but we haven't rezoned Route 9, Route 33, that's what you said.
No, they're still highway
I
development.
mean, they're highway development zones, subject to the same restrictions. This is a conditional use for this kind of use, but
It's 1:30, Mayor, I'm not in the mood for arguing with you.
Me neither. I gotta-
The vote is going to be what the vote's going to be.
it's a beautiful thing. It's democracy at work. Hearing no other comments, roll call.
Mr. Malave?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Aye.
Mr. Walsh?
No.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Okay, let's go to 9A1. We have introductions. Statement to be. We still have 8A4.
Wasn't that 8A4?
No,
that was 8A1.
I told you guys we had 8A4.
Mr. Mayor, one comment? Can you table that vote until the next meeting?
8A4?
What is it?
Because there's only one question that needs to be addressed.
Sure.
It's 1:30 in the morning.
I'd like to ask someone to make a motion to table 8A4 and put it on the next meeting.
Since it's a public hearing, it would have to be reintroduced, re-advertised.
8A4 would have to be reintroduced and re-advertised.
Since it's up for hearing.
Well, I suggest it would cost us a lot of money. You have a comment on this one?
Mayor, why don't you carry it?
Yeah. I'm sorry?
Make a motion to carry it to the next meeting.
Okay.
Open the public hearing.
Okay.
And then say, all right, we're going to open the public hearing.
Terrific.
Somebody say one word
make
and
it.
then carry it.
We're going to open it, we're going to carry it. Okay. Wonderful. And I've got to find my very inadequate book
Put
tonight.
Mr. Brannon's name down as if
Don't even
he
go to it.
started the
I
public
don't-
hearing, then carry it.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it. I'm sorry, 8A4. Ordinance number 00639, introduced and passed on first reading on 7/25/06 and published according to law, is now being taken upon further consideration of public hearing. Affidavit of the publication of this ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of 7/28/06 is submitted, and it is noted that a copy of the ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building, and the copies were available to the general public upon request. Mr. Davis, would you please read the title of the ordinance?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, amending Chapter 273 entitled Solid Waste.
Okay, I'm going to open up the hearing to members of the public who would like to be heard for or against.
I'd like to carry it until the next meeting.
Okay, we have one person from the public, but because of the lateness of the hour, I'm going to ask that a member of the council make a motion to carry this, please.
We have to, well, don't we have to motion and second, then carry it? No?
No, I just...
Motion second, carry the public hearing.
Yeah, right, we need a motion and a second to carry the public hearing. So,
I will move that we carry this 8A4 public hearing to
9:05.
We need a date.
9:05, right? September 5th.
You're really piling up that, I would suggest you save the hearing for the regular meeting,
What are the dates? Give them to us.
15th.
9:15.
To September 15th.
Okay, September 15th. We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
Any comments? Hearing none, roll call, please. Carry this.
Mr. Malave?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Council's attention, 9A1. Someone please proceed.
I'll
Bond
start,
ordinance for various capital improvements.
Do more.
I'll start reading fast once I get there. What page is that on? Here we go, 9A1. Oh, that's 8A3. Where's 9A1? Bruce, aren't you glad you won the coin toss tonight? Motion to introduce ordinance number 06-36 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in full in the August 18th, 06 issue of the Asbury Park Press, and the together with notice of introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that it will be further considered for final passage at a public hearing and a meeting of the Township Council to be held on September 15th, 06, at 6:30 prevailing time in the municipal building.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second, Mayor.
Motion and a second, are there any remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Oh, 1 second.
No.
What date did you read, Peter?
He read 9:15. Is that not the right date? 9:19. I'm sorry.
9/19/06, at 6:30 prevailing time in the municipal building, as amended.
We have a motion and a second. No comments, roll call, please.
You need me to read the title.
Read the title.
This is 9A1, correct?
Yes, it is.
Bond ordinance providing for various capital improvements and the acquisition of various capital equipment appropriating $5,400,450. Therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $5,128,450 bonds and notes to finance a portion of the cost thereof, authorized in and by the Township of Howell, County, Monmouth, New Jersey.
Roll call.
Mr. Malave?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mayor DeBello?
Yes. Next.
Motion to introduce ordinance number 06-37 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in full in the August 18th, 06 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that it will be further considered for final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on September 19th, 06 at 6:30 prevailing time in the municipal building.
Read the title, Mr. Davis, please.
Capital ordinance providing for improvements to the township sewer utility system and appropriating $45,800, therefore authorized in and by the Township of Howell, County, Monmouth, New Jersey.
Okay. We need a motion and a second.
You mean a
I'm
sec-
sorry.
Second.
We need a second. Mr. Malave?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any remarks? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Malave?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mayor DeBello?
Yes. Okay.
I'm looking for 9A3.
9A3.
I have it, I think. Motion
Go ahead, Mr.
to
Malave.
introduce ordinance number O-06-38 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in the full in the 8/18/06 issue of the Asbury Park Press and the 8/19/06 issue of the Star Ledger, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and they will be further considered for final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on 9/19/06 at 6:30 p.m. prevailing time in the municipal building.
Mr. Davis, would you please read the title of the ordinance?
Bond ordinance providing for park improvements appropriating $144,000, therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $132,000 bonds and notes to finance a portion of the cost thereof, authorized in and by the Township of Howell, County, Monmouth, New Jersey.
We need a second, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Malave?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mayor DeBello?
Yes. Motion to adjourn.
We have 9A5 and 6 still.
4, 5.
And 4, 5, and
Well, 4 is tabled.
Forest table. I'm sorry. I overlooked 5 and 6.
4, 5, and 6.
9A5.
I got
I'm
to
sorry.
find 5. Oh, here it is.
We need our
Motion to
computers back.
introduce, yeah, we need the computers back. Motion to introduce ordinance number 06-44, 06-41 on first reading by title, and to order the same to be published in full in the August 18th, 06 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that will be further considered for final passage at the public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on September 19th, 06 at 6:30 prevailing time in a municipal building.
Second, Mayor.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Davis, read the title of the ordinance.
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, amending Chapter 57 entitled Animals as it affects issues of potentially dangerous dogs and modifying the requirement of ownership.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Malave?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mayor DeBello?
Yes. Next, please.
Motion to introduce ordinance number 06-42 on first reading by title, and to order the same to be published in full in the August 1806 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that will be further considered for final passage at public hearing and a meeting of the Township Council to be held on September 19th, 06 at 6:30 prevailing time in the municipal building.
We have a motion. We need a second.
Second, Mayor.
Excuse me. Mr. Davis, would you read the title, please?
An ordinance to amend an ordinance entitled, an ordinance fixing salary and compensation of certain officers, positions, and employees in the Township of Howell, County of Monmouth, New Jersey for the year 2006, and thereafter known by its short name as Howell Township Salary Ordinance.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Malave?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mayor DeBelle?
Yes, motion to adjourn.
Well, what about information on number 11? You're not doing that either?
Not tonight. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Time is 1:40 a.m.